All right, and good morning. Welcome to MLS, making law simple. That's our new slogan. Welcome. My name is David Helm. I am a licensed practicing attorney in the state of Michigan, and today we will be covering day 3 of the Ethan Crumbly Miller hearing. For those of you who did not join us during the last 2 days, a Miller hearing comes out of the Miller U.S. Supreme Court case, which basically said it's cruel and unusual to punish a juvenile to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Uh, Based on that case, some Michigan statutes, and some Michigan cases, we have determined that there are limited circumstances in which a juvenile can be convicted, or not can be convicted, can be sentenced as an adult to life without the possibility of parole. In order for that to happen, the state must bring a motion to overcome the presumption that it would be cruel and unusual and that you don't sentence juveniles to life without the possibility of parole. Oh my God, I can't speak this morning. But welcome all in the chat. But that is what today is. Today is the continuation of the hearing regarding whether or not this individual can be sentenced to life without parole, locked up indefinitely, or is there a chance that he is um, reformed or could be reformed in the future? So, do we want to throw away the key forever, or do we want to leave that door slightly ajar, to the extent that a parole board somewhere down the road could find that Ethan Crumbly has been reformed to the extent that he is no longer a danger to society, or that he could be, more importantly, a contributing member to society. Uh, the ticker at the bottom, I have sort of outlined some of the issues. If you guys want to read that as we go along, we don't have the hearing starting just yet. And for all those who don't know, I am in Southeast Michigan. I am actually in Oakland County where this case is being held. And so I am very interested in this case. More importantly, the parents' case, the Jennifer and James Crumbly are the parents of Ethan. They have been criminally charged in this case for involuntary manslaughter. And that is a more important case to me. I haven't really been following Ethan much because it's kind of straightforward. He pled guilty. But these hearings have been a good insight into how the case might be presented against the parents, what evidence might be presented against them. And that's what I'm really interested in. I'm not so much interested in Ethan. Um, that being said, we don't have a feed yet up for today's hearing. I'm also working on getting my own cameras in the courtroom for the parents' case so that I don't have to do this and rely on, hopefully, Fox News or Law and Crime is going to have something coming up, things like that. I'm really hoping I don't have to do this going forward. I've worked everything out with the clerk to get my own cameras in the courtroom for the parents' trial. But in the meantime, we are sitting here waiting for a feed. But welcome everybody in the chat. I'll take a moment and pause and say hello. We got Jody in the chat. Welcome. Rabbit. Daisy Jones. Good morning. Welcome. Iris and Farrell are here. We have Old Line Red. John H. Kim. A bunch of people in the chat today. Salvador. Of course, Salvador is here. It's got to be like 5 a.m. for you, isn't it, man? Where you are? But welcome anyways. Brandon is in the chat. Still no alcohol in the house, Brandon. I'm sorry. We got to wait for Boone on that. Just a heads up. Murph's Turf, welcome. And yeah, 5:30 a.m. All right. I am absolutely invested in the parents' case. That will be interesting to see what unfolds. Me too. I feel so. I'm torn, right? Because right now the parents' case is at the Michigan Supreme Court. I want it to get dismissed with prejudice and precedent. However, would be very interested in seeing the trial as well, seeing how I kind of built the whole YouTube thing on the parents' case. So I'm a little torn. I really don't think the case should go forward, but I know it will because I know our Supreme Court is going to say, let's let everything resolve itself at the trial court first, and then we'll take a look at it. So let's see. Do you know any lawyers who are weightlifting bros? I do. I know a few attorneys that are weightlifting bros. I don't know what bros means, but they lift weights. There's actually a couple of female prosecutors in Oakland County, assistant prosecutors, that are big into the gym and lifting weights, and a couple of them actually compete, like bodybuilding compete stuff. So good morning. So while we're waiting for the feed, I thought I would pull up, if you guys missed it from, I think this is day one. This is an audio recording that Ethan made a couple of days or day before the shooting. It's kind of eerie, but I think it's important for people to hear again. And so while we're waiting for the feed, I'm going to play this a little bit.
My name is Ethan Crumbly, age 15, and I'm going to be the next school shooter.
By the way, we do have a court feed for this morning.
I thought about this a lot.
There's just nothing going on.
I can't stop thinking about it. Like, it's constantly in my head. Every conversation I have with someone, no matter what, I'm thinking about it and I can't get it out.
Can we move it back a few hours? We can always come back and watch.
Currently, November 29th, 2021, 10:05 p.m.
Yeah, so this is the day before.
The school I'm shooting up is Oxford High School. I'm in 10th grade there. I've always been fascinated by guns when I was a kid. And I always wanted to join the forces and SWAT when I was in 3rd grade. Navy SEALs when I was in 4th. Marines, 5th or 7th. Army, Rangers. And I've never thought of a career. I've never had motivation.
Morning, Robin.
I kept lying to myself that there was something out there for me. There was something that was going to make me happy, that was going to provide me a happy, loving, caring life. But that's bullshit. It's all a lie. I realized that. Oh, in 9th grade, I never thought of this. I thought I was going to make it through school and go into the army, but I realized, what's the fucking point? Millions have done it. Thousands have regretted it. Thousands have killed themselves because of it. Many come back and not happy, not satisfied. And I'm thinking, it's the only thing I want to go into, but how will it make me happy? How will I love doing that? How will I love? How will I? Yeah, I realized that that's not going to work out. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? And I realized all the bullshit that was right in front of me, and I never realized it. I was always the kid who said, work hard in school and you'll get a career in life. But the career is bullshit. And it was right in front of my fucking eyes the whole time.
This is a recording that Ethan Crumbly made the day before he shot up the school. This was played during the first day of the hearing, the Miller hearing, and we're just replaying it while we're waiting for a court feed to go for this morning.
I couldn't see it. The school system is... Their main goal is to put youth just born into this world to learn. And they actually learn fucking good. They learn K through 5. They learn useful stuff. Stuff about the world that teaches them not how the world is, but how it should be and how they want it to act be. The teachers brainwash them into what they think is right, and their minds are so underdeveloped that the adults just take advantage of it. And they say that that's too good for humanity. And when you get into middle school, that's even more useless. It's just an excuse to wait till the kids grow up. They're wasting years of their life learning knowledge they're most likely never going to do unless they become a Nobel Prize scientist or mathematician. Or the fucking founder of a multi-million.
Okay. Sorry. I was hoping to get enough of that in, but we're going to go live to the court feed now. Well, wrong one, of course. Here we go. Just a couple minutes behind.
Karen McDonald on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan.
Karen McDonald. Her name is Karen.
Good morning, Your Honor.
everybody.
David Williams on behalf of the people.
Paulette Michelle Lofton on behalf of Ethan Crumbly.
Amy Happ on behalf of Ethan Crumbly.
Good morning, Your Honor. Deborah H. McKelvey on behalf of Ethan Crumbly.
Thank you, and good morning to all counsel. You may all be seated. Defense ready to proceed with your next witness?
Yes, if I could just have a moment to connect the PowerPoint, please.
Absolutely.
We are on the defense's case in chief. The defense called two experts yesterday. Or not yesterday, last week, Thursday, Friday. And we are continuing with the defense's case in chief. The state already went. State has the burden. They already went. They called basically fact witnesses, which was a little odd because the question is whether or not Ethan is ever redeemable as a human being to contribute something to society.
I think we should begin.
Defense will call Dr. Colin King to the stand.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Doctor, you're going to approach the witness stand. You're going to stand in the witness box, faced by clerk to be sworn, please.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you swear or affirm that the statements you're about to make to this court will be the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat.
He, the judge was a prosecutor for about 6
You're going to
years. He's
serve
only
the court. Please
33. He's
state your
very
full
young.
name for the record and spell your last name.
Sure. My name is Colin King. C is in Charlie. O-L-I-N. Last name King. K-I-N-G.
Thank you. Defense your witness.
Thank you. Dr. King, I'll let you get situated. Let me know when you're ready.
Thank you.
He's going to have a laptop for his notes. It's just like such a presentation. Get my laptop out, put my
Okay.
glasses on.
Doctor, what is your highest qualification for education?
I have a PhD in counseling psychology
And where did you obtain your degree?
from Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan.
What licenses do you hold?
I am a fully licensed psychologist, and I'm also licensed as a professional counselor, so I'm dually licensed.
What certifications do you have?
So I'm certified as a board forensic counselor, a board certified sentence mitigation specialist, a certified advanced addiction specialist.
Have you ever had your license revoked or suspended?
No, ma'am.
Judge
Where did
was
you do your internship?
So I did my
He was appointed,
internship
but he has to
in,
run for election
Michigan
again.
City, Indiana, and that's at a psychiatric hospital that treats children, adolescent, and adults. And then I did a second internship at Southwest Detroit Community Mental Health, working with patients with chronic mental health issues and polysubstance abuse.
Just for the record, it appears the witness is consulting some documents. Can we just identify what those are?
Thank you, sir. What do you have that's currently with you on the witness stand?
Sure, I submitted a copy of my CV.
Thank you. And is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
People, do you have a copy of the CD?
Yes, Your Honor. He's got a whole binder. I just want to make sure I understand what he's consulting.
Yeah, I can absolutely tell you what is in my binder, sir.
Sure, there's no need, sir. If you could please set the binder aside and let's specifically ask to refer to it.
Okay.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Absolutely. Your resume indicates that you also lectured at a number of universities. Can you describe that?
Yes, so as an adjunct professor, I've lectured at Wayne State, Eastern Michigan University,
Ooh, that's
Ashland
where I went.
University, and University of Detroit, Mercy.
And what courses did you teach there?
I taught classes in multicultural issues and psychological testing.
You also worked as a special education consultant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what did you do there?
I consult with one of the charter schools in Michigan, doing IEPs and psychological testing.
You also have listed that you are a brain injury expert. Can you tell me about your experience treating brain injury and or mental illness?
Absolutely. So I've worked with.
Yes, this is still on defense witnesses. This is now the third expert being called by the defense. And we'll see how long this goes. I have a feeling this hearing should wrap up today, but I don't know if the state's going to have rebuttal. So we'll see.
A large Midwestern brain injury facility, actually one of the largest in Michigan. And over the last maybe 23 years or so, I have treated various forms of brain injuries, mental illness, and patients with polysubstance abuse. In fact, I was tasked as a part of my assignments, tasked with supervising teams of occupational therapists, physical therapists, nurses, and psychologists. I've traveled to different states and met with neurologists and assessed patients who were injured due to maybe auto accident or spinal cord injury or stroke. Had an opportunity to look at their medical records and review their records with physicians, and then return back to Michigan and set up treatment programs for them. I also traveled to Loma Linda University, which is one of the largest, which has one of the largest cadaver labs in the nation, and had an opportunity to meet with a neuropathologist and got a chance to look at various models of the brain, to handle the brain and to see how it works. I've also attended various lectures at the Amen clinics, and you may know he's the award winner on Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. I actually had my own brain scanned, and so that gives me my experience in brain injury.
Have you ever testified in any juvenile life cases before?
I have.
In what counties?
Wayne, Macomb, Genesee, and I think Jackson.
In the last 3 years, approximately how many juvenile lifers, homicide, or competency cases have you testified in?
Probably about 24, 25.
Have you been previously qualified as an expert?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, he's a slow talker.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to have Dr. Colin King as an expert in mental health, forensic psychology, and brain injury.
Judge, I
I'm not-
understand he's interviewed. I'm sorry, may I, Judge?
I'm not sure if any of the
I understand
foundation
that
was laid
he's
for that.
interviewed the defendant, and he's here as a mitigation specialist, and I don't have any issue with that. There's nothing in his report or in the record to indicate that this defendant had any kind of brain injury. So I would object to his qualification on that simply because it's not relevant to this proceeding.
Thank you. As it relates to any brain injury, unless there's going to be foundation laid that this defendant has brain injury, then that's not appropriate. However, I will qualify this witness as an expert in mental health and forensic psychology. Is that correct?
That is correct.
He is so qualified.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So when you're qualifying an expert, you need to be able to establish the experience, the education, the credentials of whatever. He could just look at the CV and say that. And my comment that they didn't lay the proper foundation to qualify him as a psychological expert kind of tends to this is what happened, because maybe there's a lot more in his CV than what was actually testified to, because what he testified to was not enough, in my opinion. The judge is probably looking at his CV, though, but you still got to, for the record, lay some sort of foundation. This is defense witness.
And Your Honor, we do have a demonstrative PowerPoint
The
to
defense's
explain his
third
report.
expert witness.
If you want to just move to the next slide. All right, so I want to go over the process that was taken. Is it working? Oh, yeah. Just move to the next one. So let's start with the process. It is my understanding that you became involved in this case in December of 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
All right. And can you tell me what you did first?
So I spent approximately 23 to 24 hours testing Ethan Crumley over about 6 sessions, and I used
It's a
about
question
15
for the
different assessments, and I've turned in my report.
parole board
It's about a
eventually,
6 to 9 to 70 page report.
way down the road to answer.
Some of the testing, was it done in person?
Yes, ma'am.
And then some of the testing, was it done on computer or by Zoom?
It was done virtually. Yes, ma'am.
So you interviewed him multiple times, approximately 1 year after the incident, a little bit longer than 1 year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Were you also given a litany of records, videos, text messages, and reports to review?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you then do research to gather data and establish the standards that are required?
I did.
Here we also have that you consulted with a Dr. Malcolm Court, that is a sociologist. Why is it important to peer review?
Well, because I wanted a different discipline to look at my work and to provide me feedback on my work. I wanted to make sure
Might have missed that.
that
Thanks.
it was not just my personal opinion, but that my work was based on testing and solid scientific evidence.
And Your Honor, I'll draw your attention to Exhibit O, the CV of Dr. Malcolm Court, and Exhibit P, the report of Dr. Malcolm Court, which reviews Dr. King's findings.
Thank you.
You want to move to the next one?
Judge, if I may, I believe we stipulated the admission of exhibits with the understanding Dr. Court was a witness. And so I had some questions for Dr. Court, and now what it sounds like is he's not going to testify. So I have an issue with the court using his report as a basis, as evidence in this case, without the chance to cross-examine.
So Dr. Court was not listed on my witness list. I did have conversations with Mr. Keese, the fact that Mr. Court would not be called. This should not be a surprise at all. And they did not object to my exhibits.
Okay. Judge, I'll do with this to weigh the evidence to the court to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. The court will apply the appropriate weight.
See,
noting that the doctor will not
respectful.
testify. You may
Thank you.
proceed.
To some extent.
So as a brief
We see a lot of shenanigans in a lot of cases with a lot of prosecutors. I have a lot of issues with this particular prosecutorial team. But when it comes to this kind of thing, I like that procedurally they're respectful and they just move on. They don't make a mountain out of a molehill.
overview, what is it that you looked at in regards to this case to form an opinion?
Sure. So I looked at Ethan's early life. I looked at the parental influences and activities. I looked at the Oxford school system, testing results, events leading up to the shooting, the day of shooting, and a review of mental illness.
Can we move to the next one? All right, so let's talk about early childhood experiences. Can you discuss that?
Absolutely.
Again, Your Honor, he's consulting
He has the
something.
PowerPoint.
Okay, it's simply the PowerPoint.
Yeah, this is this is an exact copy.
Let me step in. Anytime you're referring to something on the witness stand, the parties need to be aware of what you're looking at. And so you just can't just pick something up and start reviewing it. First, the defense attorney or the prosecutor has to prompt you to look at something. So what are you currently looking at, sir?
I have an exact copy of the PowerPoint that is on the screen, sir.
Thank you. And that's the only thing that you're looking at right now?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you.
The judge explained what I was just going to explain, so that's good.
All right, so let's start again. Early childhood experiences. What did you come across when examining all of the evidence and discussing the matter with Mr. Crumpley?
Certainly, in my review of the records, I saw that as early as age 10, matter of fact, even going back to age 6, there were some issues. I interviewed a neighbor, and looking at the records, which were corroborated.
Apparently, the
that he
neighbors
was
are
left
also going to
unattended
testify in
as
the
early
parents'
as age
case.
6. He will go across to the neighbor's house, especially when there was like a thunder shower, and reported that he was afraid and would ask for help. And they would ask him where were his parents, and his response was, "I don't know." In the records, at age 10, there's text messages between Ethan and his mom saying to her, "When are you going to come home?"
I don't know if they ever ran any sort of talk screen. I don't know what the results are, mainly because Ethan pled guilty, so a lot of that didn't come out. But I will say that this is now the third expert that's examined Ethan and talked about this, and none of them have mentioned any drug use. So I can't imagine there was any.
And there were no responses. In my interview with Ethan, he explained that he spent countless hours watching various adult games. Some of them are in my report, and Assassin's Creed, Grand Theft Auto, and he
We're
also
still
spent
blaming
an
video games.
inordinate amount of time going to different websites and indulging in various graphic scenes, and indicated after a while he began to fantasize about being part of those scenes. So he sort of lost track of reality.
I believe there's
You
correlation
also have listed
here.
trauma. What is trauma?
By the way, I sped it up because he's such a slow talker and we're a little behind. But I think this is more correlation than causation, right? The correlation. I'm fascinated with violent acts, so I'm also going to engage in video games of violent acts and perpetrate them in real life. I don't think one causes the other. I think the two are symptomatic of the same thing.
Trauma is sort of an insult to the person, an insult to the brain. So it could be as a result of parental discord. It could be as a result of high levels of anxiety or high levels of depression. Anything that insults the person's brain can be classified as trauma.
What about constant stress from parents fighting?
Yes, parental dysfunction, constant and intense dysfunction, can induce trauma. In my interview with Ethan and in a review of the records also, there's frequent references to either parent threatening to commit suicide And on some occasions,
I'll be
Ethan
right back.
had to be the one intervening at such a young age.
What about the loss of a grandparent or the loss of an animal, especially in a violent death?
Absolutely. Ethan disclosed that one of his sort of soulmate was a large dog that he had cherished, and it died at home, and he was the one tasked with having to remove it and take it back to the shed and figure out how to dispose of it.
And you saw the Google searches where he actually is looking how to dispose of a dog that has passed away. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
What about the loss of a best friend?
The loss of a best friend and perhaps your only friend could be a pretty traumatic experience, as in the case of Ethan. And as seen in the record, he spent hours and hours communicating with his best friend and pouring out his heart and disclosing what was happening to him.
Were you also told what his mother told him when that friend went away to a rehab?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
She told him that he would probably never see his friend again.
All right, let's move on. Dr. Keating, when he testified last week, touched on ACEs. Can you explain what that is to the court?
Yeah, so I think in 1995 and 97, my year could be off, the CDC and Kaiser commissioned a study where they looked at 17,000 people, and they have established what is called ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. And what the researchers saw was that between the ages of 0 to 18, children exposed to abuse, physical or emotional, mental, parental dysfunction, or incarceration, the more ACEs someone has, the more likely they are to have mental health issues. In fact, what the researchers discovered is that with 6 or more ACEs, the probability of that person dying 20 years earlier than their peer is greatly improved.
This is exactly what Nicholas was talking about last week, which is very interesting. He pulled that
And
up.
were you able to find a number of these factors when you interviewed Ethan as well as reviewed the records?
Yes, ma'am.
In a number of our conversations, you had discussed a feral child. What is a feral child?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's correlation as opposed to causation, right? If someone's interested in violent acts, they will commit violent acts as well as maybe play video games with violent acts and watch movies with violent acts. It's not a causation.
So a feral child, and I would love to read the definition if I can.
If you can give us the definition, that would be fine.
Certainly. It's essentially a child who has been abandoned.
Look at that image.
Initially, this phenomenon was known as someone who is abandoned physically, but then there is an emotional and a psychological construct to it. So what the researchers saw is that someone who is abandoned has what is called arrested development. Hence, they lack social skills.
It's a
They
great
lack
TV show.
social awareness. They lack social cues, and essentially become misfits in society.
And why do you feel that this is relevant in your review of this case?
So when I interviewed Ethan and just looked at his profile, at his high level of isolation, lack of parental support, lack
So
of
what happened to you,
guidance,
Farrell?
lack of resources. So psychologically and socially, he can be considered a feral child.
Let's move on. You also had the opportunity to review some text messages between Ethan's parents, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Your Honor, just for your notes, it is Exhibit F.
Thank you.
I apologize, Exhibit G. And in those text messages, were you able to see where they were discussing situations that Ethan was going through as early as March or even October of 2020?
Yes.
And what did those text messages show you?
So very clear indication that his parents were not in tune to what was going on with him. In this string of text messages, he actually woke up in their room one day, and the mom and dad they were exchanging text messages, and they were sort of joking that Ethan was asking, "What am I doing in you guys' role?" And one of the text messages stated that he seemed to be under the influence of substances. And one parent asked the other, "Did you give him one of your Xanax?" And she said, "No." never told him.
So do those text messages show that Ethan was experiencing things
This is
that his parents at
1.25
least were
reindeer.
observing at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's move to part 2, which is the parental influences and activities. I know that we touched on things that Ethan reported, the threats of suicide made in front of Ethan. What else did you find that was interesting under this section?
So under this section, Ethan witnessed just a litany of verbal abuse, frequent taunts, and I guess the part that sort of stood out for me was when he told his parents that he was hearing voices and he needed to see a therapist. I don't know what 15-year-old raises his hand and says, my brain hurts, I need to see a therapist. And it never happened.
They're going to play that heavy against the
What
parents.
did you find out about the purchase of the gun and then going to the shooting range?
So there seemed to have been discord between his parents. I think his dad bought the gun out of spite. And then his mom took him to the shooting range out of spite because they were arguing. So there was constant just discord and family dysfunction.
And in your interview with Ethan, did he report that he was ever taken to any sort of doctor to deal with this?
In my review of the record, there was no indication that he was ever taken to a doctor.
In your interviews and your discussion with him about the constant situations that were going on, was there constant arguments about divorce and which parent that Ethan would choose?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit?
So yes, there was frequent, harsh discussions about infidelity, suicide, and which parent Ethan needed to choose to live with when they separate or the event that they separate.
Were you able to look at the text messages between Ethan and his friend over the months leading up to November?
I did.
All right, and what's the significance that you found with those text messages?
So in reviewing those text messages, let me just say Ethan had no idea that these text messages were going to be made public. And so he was having private conversations with his friend. And in one of his text messages, which is on their screen, he says that my mom thinks I'm taking drugs, but she doesn't worry about my mental health. In another of the text messages on the screen, he said, I have an
That's
effing
not so much the
breakdown in
question.
shower. And in the text messages also, he said, from what my mom said last night, I went.
No drugs were found in the system. I believe they didn't specifically come out and say that because he pled that evidence really wasn't coming to play. However, this is now the third expert testifying for the defense, and I have to imagine if there were drugs found in his system, that would have been addressed already. And since it hasn't been, I'm going to assume no. And C-Swept, I'm not answering your stupid question.
Outside in my shorts, and I have no recollection of that event. And in another text message on your screen, he said to his friend, I am hallucinating. And he said, I hear like people talking to me. These were actual text messages back and forth between himself and his friend.
Okay. I want to move next to part 3, which is the Oxford school system. Were you able to take a look at the counseling that was available to Ethan at the school, as well as the reports surrounding the school's interaction with Ethan the day prior and the day of the incident?
Can you repeat that question?
Sure. Were you able to look at Oxford school system and their counseling program, as well as the interaction that the school system had with him the day before, as well as the day of the incident?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And can you explain what you found?
So what I found was that in terms of the available resources for intervention, it did not appear to me from my review of the information that he was afforded any type of mental health assistance.
Okay. I'm gonna go to the next one. All right. You also mentioned in your report implicit bias. What is that?
So implicit bias it's sort of like the unconscious forces. You know, I can use an analogy of a peanut butter jar, which is actually on one of their slides. And so a child learns how to use peanut butter from a jar because the child is taught by the parent how to do that. They learn how to unscrew and cork and unscrew the peanut butter jar to get peanut from their peanut butter. So after a while, they learn it so well that they're able to do it unconsciously. The grooves on that bottle represent the grooves that society
Good
grooves
morning.
us with, so that we have certain perception of things and people. Well, that's how implicit bias works. Let me give you another quick example. I was in court in Detroit and about to step into the elevator, and there was an attorney and other people. I was dressed in suit and tie, and the attorney turned to me and said, "Counsel, come on in."
They've already tried to put the blame.
But he made
They've already tried to put the blame on the parents. They did it extensively in day one, and not so much in day two, but they're continuing it here. And that's why I'm so interested in this, because I'm covering the parents' case, and I wanted to see kind of what angle, what approach they were going to take against the parents.
the assumption based on how I was dressed and how I comported myself that I was an attorney. Well, that's how implicit bias works. So it's not necessarily a bad thing nor a good thing. It's a thing, but it can have deadly consequences if it's not used appropriately.
Now, you also stated that you had a chance to look at the resources that were available to any high school student at Oxford High School. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is there a rubric or is there a standard
I agree.
that is required for a school to have counselors, to have support staff, or to be able to help the students when they have issues?
Certainly. So the American
Thank you, Shizzy.
School
Good morning to you.
Association, known as ASCA. This is sort of like the monitoring body that makes recommendation in terms of social worker to student ratio. So the recommendation is that there be minimum one social worker to about 250 students. And what that body says is that if you have a ratio of one social worker to 1,000 students.
Yes, this expert could be called to testify. What's interesting, the dynamics in this case, is that the state is trying to put the blame on the child, to the point where you have police officers that testified on day one, and in a certain way, kind of minimizing the parents' effect or the parents' involvement in this. And that same officer, I guarantee, is going to testify with a different emphasis in a couple, 3 months or so. And although this is a defense witness in this particular hearing, there's nothing that prevents the state from calling this very same witness and putting the blame on the parents in the parents' case. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamics between the two cases. And it's the same prosecutorial team. It's the same prosecutor. It's the same team of prosecutors.
You are not even getting into the classroom.
Okay. Were you able to find the data, and I know that it's contained in your report, regarding Oxford in the year prior and the year of the incident?
Certainly.
Okay. And Your Honor, just because they're numbers, I ask if it's okay that he refer to his notes just to get the numbers correct.
Well, specifically, the police officer, when he was questioned by defense counsel on cross, said, "Isn't it true that the parents took money and ran off?" And he's like, "Well, I think they were at a friend's place." And he said, "And they abandoned their vehicle." And he said, "Well, they had 2 vehicles and they took one." And they said, "Oh, and they got burner phones." And he's like, "Well, I believe that was on advice of their counsel to get new phones." That's what I mean by this officer is minimizing the parents' involvement in this case. And the exact same officer is going to say they abandoned their vehicle and they got burner phones and they were hiding out from the law. That sort of approach is what's going to be presented when it's the parents' case, even though the state is taking the exact opposite position in this case. That's what I was referring to.
Okay. Thank you. You may, sir.
So in the 2019-2020 school year, what was the social worker to student ratio in Oxford?
So it
Exactly
was,
right, Silver.
approximately one social worker to about 1,000 students.
What about 2020 to 2021?
It was 1 to 1 social worker to about 900 students.
And then what about 2021 to 2022?
It was about 1 to about 900 students.
So you went even a step further to look at suspensions and expulsions. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And what were your findings?
So in my research in the Oxford school system, just in terms of raw data, I saw that whites comprised about 80% of the school district's enrollment, and blacks comprised, I think, about just under 5%, and Hispanics about 12%, which is reflective, I believe, of the society. So there was nothing revealing about that. However, when you begin now to disaggregate the data, because data tells you something, so that when you begin to disaggregate it, you see a pattern, which is visible on your screen. So whites, 80% enrollment, and in terms of suspensions, 68% of the students suspended were whites. Blacks, enrollment, 5%. Suspension, 12%. Let's look at expulsions.
The student's
Again,
not black.
Whites, 80%.
Why are
of
we
the
talking about
population.
this?
Expulsions, 44%, so about half. Blacks, 5% of the population. Expulsions, 22%. Hispanic.
So this testimony is irrelevant, but I wanted to make this point. Yeah, so there's plenty of things that you could have charged the parents with. Neglect, child neglect is one of them. Contributing to the delinquency of a minor is another one. Not involuntary manslaughter.
I think about 12% of the population. Expulsions, 22%. What this data is telling you is very significant, is that all the students are suspended or expelled at a disproportionate rate when considered to the majority population. And then when you dig a little deeper, you have to ask yourself, what are we missing? And as it pertains to Ethan, as you will see, is that the students are not subject to the same degree of rigor, which is why implicit bias is so important.
Okay. And can you explain, just so it's clear, how implicit bias ties into these findings?
We're willing to look the other way when white children are failing and we don't suspend them, and that's implicit bias, and somehow that's relevant to this particular case. Okay, let's go with that.
Absolutely, because if you believe that a student is
Morning,
not
Antron.
a problem, you are less likely to pay attention to that student. Even if you are shown overwhelming evidence about problems. Implicit bias says, you give this person a pass because that's how you've been groomed.
Yeah, we were
certain
playing that at the
So you
beginning
give
of the
certain
stream.
people a pass based on your assumptions. However, if you give a person a pass who is a problem, it creates a bigger issue.
Okay. So I want to go into a little bit of what you call a pass. You were shown a number of assignments that were found in Ethan's backpack, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you would agree with me that, in your honor, these exhibits can be found in Exhibit C.
Thank you.
There is a number of pieces of paper with guns, with bullets, and other alarming scenes drawn on them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I know the prosecutor made mention that we aren't 100% certain that these were seen by teachers, but they were in his backpack and our school assignments, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How about seen by parents? Also, I got my parents every once in a while clean out like their attic or a closet and bring me over a bunch of like, oh, here's your old school file. You know how many pictures of things, random things, guns, or ships with cannon and whatever I'm drawing as a kid? I mean, it's just something that you do back before there were smartphones. Well, I guess even now with their smartphones, kids still just doodle on their pages. I didn't do anything remotely close to this.
Were you also able to look
Remotely
at
close.
emails between the teachers the day before this incident as well as the day of the incident discussing the things that had come to light from?
Christy, let's address this. I've said it a number of times, and I'm sorry to stop it again. when my daughter turned 16, I purchased a vehicle. She contributed money towards it. I took her money. I went and purchased a vehicle, titled it in my name, insured it in my name, gave it to her to use. She posted pictures. Oh, got my new car, all that good stuff. My new car, my new car. Here's my daughter's new car, right? It's not actually hers. She gave money to it, but she can't legally own it. We can't title the vehicle in her name. It's not actually hers. It's her vehicle, right? It's the same sort of thing. Now, if you have Ethan Crumbly who works and saves money, gives it to his dad to buy him a vehicle, the vehicle is licensed in the dad's name, insured in the dad's name, right? Because you can't license it in a minor's name. And then Ethan drives to school and intentionally runs down a bunch of kids, killing 4 of them and injuring 7. Are you charging the parents? No, probably not. So, if you're not going to charge the parents in that situation, but you are going to charge them in this situation, the actions of the parties is not the issue. It's the guns. It's the fact that it's a gun.
The
and that's
teachers
problem.
trying to give warning to the people in the office.
Yes, ma'am.
And Your Honor, that's also found in Exhibit C.
Thank you.
And what did those emails show to you, or how do they tie into implicit bias?
So just looking at the emails, I was this red flags went out. It's one teacher said, and it's on their screen as an exhibit. And this is from Miss Kropinski. She said, I know Jackie emailed you guys yesterday with some concerns about Ethan Crumley in our first hour class. Today, he's watching videos on his phone and a guy gunning down people. It looks like it's a movie scene and not security footage, a real event, but definitely still concerning when taking into account some of his behaviors. I continue. And this is from Ms. Gubini. I had a student doing first hour. Ethan Crumby, who was on his phone looking at different bullets at the end of first hour today. As I was walking around the room passing out their essays, I didn't get a chance to investigate it a bit further since it was at the end of the hour. Now that he's on my radar, I'm also noticing that some of his previous work that he completed from early in the year lean a bit toward the violent side. I can bring these things later today during my 5th prep hour.
And we can tell the time on that email.
See, that's an excellent thought, right? So if the state wants to charge the parents because they didn't do enough, despite, or, they didn't do enough because this kid could have gotten help ahead of time. But now they're saying the kid can't get help, and therefore he must be locked in jail for the rest of his life without the possibility of parole. Those two positions are mutually exclusive of each other, aren't they? That's a fun little thought. That's why I said, like, even with the state's witnesses, or them calling this witness again, they are setting themselves up to be opposed to each other.
Email is
I like that.
9:33 a.m. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The assignment that Ms. Kubina is talking about, you had a chance to look at, and it's contained as well in my exhibit. It's a note card where a gun was erased, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And there is also a drawing of a person with an arm outstretched with a gun, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So I want to get into the brain and mental illness. You can go to the next one. What is mental illness?
So
You got to listen to the voicemail from the counselor on the day before when he's looking up bullets in a violent video or something like that. It's like, oh, hi, we just had to have a talk with Ethan. All is cool. Just wanted to let you know. It's that kind of tone.
it's a substantial disorder of thought or mood that significantly impairs judgment, behavior, and the capacity to recognize reality. Mental illness is actually a symptom of a deeper problem. So, for example, if someone has a chest pain is a symptom of a deeper problem. It could be a pulled muscle or it could be because of a heart attack. So mental illness is a sign of brain dis-ease.
So there are multiple ways to study the brain. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you briefly discuss those different ways?
Certainly. So one way is to look at the brain directly. So cardiologists look at the heart, dentists look at the teeth, and mental health people should look directly at the brain through various brain imaging techniques which are available. So that's one way.
Christy, they should not stand. I don't know if they will stand, but they should not stand.
A second way is you want to test the brain directly through psychological instruments. Then a third way is what is utilized by psychiatrists and psychologists, and that is to use symptom clusters. So for example, if someone comes to me and they say, for the last month or so, I've not been sleeping well, I've not been eating well, I've been skipping out on work, I've been crying, I've been sad and blue. Then I go to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, and I look at symptoms. And if the person has, for example, 5 of these 8 symptoms, then I can diagnose that person like with major depressive disorder. So that's the third way of looking at the brain. And then the last one really is not appropriate, and that is that you guess. So what you do, you say, well, because I see you acting in this way, and because you can plan, and because you can execute, and because you can do these things, I know that you're not ill or don't have a brain dysfunction. That is guessing.
So were you able to actually look at Ethan's brain directly through imaging?
I was not able to.
Okay. So did you then decide to test the brain using assessment tools and perform a number of testing?
Yes, that is correct.
We'll go to the next one. Can you explain to us the brain and exactly how easy it is for the brain to be damaged in a variety of ways?
Absolutely. So
Judge, I'd like some foundation for this area. There's just no evidence in the record that this tenant suffered any brain damage.
If you please lay more foundation.
Absolutely. Were you able to view a video taken at the 5-1 diner?
yes,
I don't know.
Okay. And
Query
in
again.
that video, actually, we'll go ahead and play it now
So
since
what
it's
I would like to
Sure.
emphasize.
1 second, she has to ask a question. I can't interrupt.
sure. So were you able to, in your discussions with Ethan and the evidence that you were presented, were you able to, or did you have some concern that an injury to the brain could have occurred based on what he reported as a child and what you saw in this video?
Yes.
Let's go ahead and play the video. This is my Exhibit R. There is no sound in this video.
What was that?
So this is from 2020. What did you observe on this video?
So I observed Ethan walking in the diner, and for some inexplicable reason, his head takes a direct hit to the floor,
He fell.
and observed him trying to get
That's
up
the
his own
reason.
volition, but he was not able to. And as we know, the brain is very soft. It has the consistency of soft.
He
but
like
raw
walked
egg.
and fell over.
And it's housed in this very hard box called the skull that has very sharp ridges. The brain is very susceptible to injury, and I'd love to do a demonstration. With your permission.
Sure, Your Honor, he has a demonstration to show with an egg, as he described, how exactly, how soft the brain.
Well, a little off topic, Brandon. But I assume there would be some sort of charge for the unlawful practice of law. It depends on the state, though. But essentially, it's unlicensed practice of law if they're not licensed properly.
Is and how little it takes to injure.
Usually,
the
it's a
brain. Would the
bar
court allow-
thing, like the bar admissions. The bar association would be really the one heading that up.
I'm sorry, someone was just approaching
Yes,
without asking permission. I'm sorry, what exactly are you trying to do?
Yes, Your Honor. My witness would like to demonstrate to the court how easy it is, as he described, the brain is like a raw egg inside of the skull. He would like to demonstrate to the court how easy it is, even a fall like this, to damage the inside of the brain.
People, any objection?
Judge, I guess I just wonder what the basis of that testimony is. It sounds like it's just Dr. King telling us. And the idea that it's the consistency of an ag statements report without citing anything, I would like some foundation that
I
this
see.
is not just Dr. King's theory.
Thank you. Respectfully, your argument goes to the
Is he representing himself, though? If he's representing himself, he can represent himself in any state, anywhere.
weight of this demonstrative evidence, and so the court will apply the appropriate weight. You may approach the witness.
This testimony seems a bit dubious. He fell down once at work, and without a scan or anything, we're going to declare that, oh God, he's dropping an
And can
egg
you
in a
demonstrate,
bowl.
since obviously this is a video courtroom and we're recording, can you demonstrate or discuss what you're going to demonstrate?
Absolutely. So as I think that's
This is your brain on drugs, kids.
I can't see what you're doing.
My apologies, Ron. So as I mentioned, it's 100 billion neurons and 1 trillion connections in the brain. And this is scientific evidence. This is not my opinion. This is how the human
This
human
is how he
brain
tested
is,
Ethan's
engineered.
skull.
And it has the consistency of soft butter or raw egg. I've had the opportunity to visit the lab in Loma Linda. I've handled the human brain, and I've seen how the human brain.
Wait a minute. Consistency of soft butter or a raw egg? Did you say a raw egg? Because those are very two different, like, consistencies, right? I mean, I cook a lot. I feel like they're very different.
It works and how it looks like. This has the consistency of an egg. Ethan is about 6 feet 2 inches tall, and this is not 6 feet 2 inches. This probably is about, I don't know, 2 feet.
Before you move on, sir, please do not. Are you going to drop this egg in the courtroom? Thank you. I can't see.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you. You may proceed, sir.
Yeah, the
No,
judge
it's
is the finder of
difficult for
fact.
me
Do it
if
in
I
front of the
don't stand, Your
judge.
Honor.
Thank you. You can stand now. I just can't see over this bar here, so I can't see what's below your chest area. So you may stand so that way I can see what you're doing, sir.
Okay, Jamie, so
So,
maybe this is
he's
going to
been
be
a
more
6 feet
entertaining than I thought.
And this is less than 2 feet. That's the human brain. The reason why our brains
It's
don't
not the
collapse
human brain.
when we have an injury is because the brain
Egg,
is out of
sir.
this hard shell called the skull. This skull protects the brain from external injuries.
So besides the incident that we saw at the 5-1 diner, did he also make you aware of other circumstances where he hit his head or even blacked out?
That
Yes.
was one of the
Can you describe that?
dumbest
Ethan
things.
disclosed that he was out with his parents. I think they were picking strawberries or doing something like that. And he fell.
It was so
and all he
dramatic.
remembered was
We need to
coming
replay
towards
it
the
in
gaining
slow motion, right?
consciousness. And he asked his parents what happened. And they said that he had taken a blow to the head. And there is no indication that he was taken
Yeah,
to the
right.
emergency
Get a real
room
brain. Do it live.
or received medical assistance.
In regards to the 5-1 diner,
Twitter's going nuts. The doctor dropped an egg. Thank you very much for that £9.99 super chat. I have ADHD. ADHD can come with a type of epilepsy. Looks like he just had a seizure due to the ADHD diagnosis, or am I off? I've just tuned in and seen ADHD. But hello, everyone. Well, hello back to you. So the problem with the testimony is that he didn't give a basis for it. He's just like, well, what do you see? He's like, he hit his head unexpectedly. Well, it's not unexpectedly. He fell down. You don't know why he fell down. You didn't examine his brain. You didn't do a brain scan. This guy didn't look at medical reports. He's just like, he fell down. He probably hit his head. And if you hit your head, apparently it's like an egg. That's the extent of this guy's testimony. And the state is allowing it because the judge is the fact finder here. So they're going to argue basically that everything that this guy said is nonsense. Probably rightfully so. And they're not really objecting, because if this is in front of a jury, it'd be a whole different situation. But this is utter nonsense. But I don't think I don't know enough to say that ADHD has some sort of type of epilepsy and could cause him to faint or have a seizure or something like that. Maybe that's true, but this expert and no expert has testified part of that. And if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think any expert has testified that he actually suffers from ADHD. I know he has an IEP, which is an individual education plan or individualized education plan. But that doesn't mean he has ADHD or any sort of else, any other mental health thing that's been diagnosed. Just that he's struggling in school and he needs an individually devised plan of education. But that's the only thing that I believe we've heard. And all of this makes no sense and is highly entertaining, though.
Your video,
laughable.
you were shown a report where the owner was interviewed, and in fact, his parents told the owner to not call 911 after that fall.
He
Is that
practiced
your
this at
understanding?
home this
Yes,
morning and last night.
And in your interview with Ethan, did he ever tell you that at some point following that he was taken to the hospital or taken to the doctor to see, one, why he fell, or two, what happened from the fall?
I saw no evidence of that.
Let's move on. Let's go through a couple of these more quickly. Let's go to part 4. We're going to move along to part 4, which is Ethan's testing. Can you explain to the court the tests that you
Not that I'm aware
you
of.
performed with Ethan?
Certainly. So I
don't believe there's
15 different types
there's been any testimony regarding any medication or any drugs whatsoever that Ethan has taken. So
and I wanted to, because there was an opportunity to image his brain, so I wanted to test his brain to see what his brain is like. And so there are a list of 15 tests there on the screen in my report.
Okay, let's go through them. The evaluation of competency to stand trial. Why was this important?
It was important because this is a test that is affirmed by that is recognized, I should say, by the U.S. Supreme Court in Dusky versus the people in 1960. And it essentially looks at 3 things. Does the person have the ability to consult with their attorney? Does the person have the ability to rationally understand the proceedings of the court? Does the person have a factual understanding of the proceedings of the court? And the
He's gonna
reason
try
why
to say
I
he's
think
not
this test is
competent
because
right
I hear
now?
that sometimes inmates
he did a competency evaluation. The kid's he's already been evaluated for competency and he pled guilty.
or
I just love how the judge was like, "Sir, you're not going to drop that in my courtroom, right?" And he holds up the ball.
they fake.
I got to
and try
redo that. That's
pretend
going to be a cut.
that something is going on, but that is not the case. So when I administer this test, anything below 60 is normal, indicating that Ethan approached this test in an honest and open manner. In other words, he was not feigning. He didn't know the questions that pertained to feigning.
And what were the results?
He does have the ability to consult with his attorney.
Everyone needs to stay away from RJ. He might be homicidal.
He does understand the charges against him, and he does have a factual understanding of the charges.
Okay, let's move on to the next test, the mini mental status examination. What is that?
It's a test that has essentially 30 questions, and it tests the person's orientation. My reason for administering this is, again, this is one of the instruments that if someone wants to feign or fake, they can easily do that. For example, some of the questions are, what is the date? What is the date? Where are you? And Ethan entered all of those questions, indicating on that day that he was oriented times 3.
Let's move to the next one. You did a survey of stress symptoms. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Can you explain your findings?
So on this instrument, on the survey of stress symptoms, Ethan scored 39, indicating high levels of stress. And it was very clear to me that he was approaching it in a very honest, test-taking manner.
And can you just describe some of the symptoms that this test addresses?
Certainly. Anxiety, depression, feeling overwhelmed, loneliness, intrusive thoughts, fatigue. All of those are elements that are present in this test that he endorsed.
Okay. Let's move to the next one, post-traumatic stress checklist for DSM-5. Can you explain what that is?
Sure, it's an instrument that is based on the DSM-5, which is the golden standard of diagnosing mental illness. And so his score of 57 places him in the very high stress category that meets the DSM criteria.
You then did the Beck Depression Inventory. Can you explain that to the court?
Sure, it's an instrument that
natural death. We have no death penalty in Michigan. We haven't had one since before we became a state. We had an execution go awry when we were a territory in Detroit that lost a man his head, and we said no more. So no death penalty.
assesses for depression, sadness, intrusive thoughts, malaise, and his score is 29, which is on the higher level.
I mean, just because you
indicating
bumped your
you're
head
high
doesn't mean that you're going to go on a homicidal rampage. That's amazing.
levels of depression.
And again, you're performing these testings at least a year after he has become incarcerated, correct?
That is correct.
Let's look at the next one. It's the Burns Anxiety Inventory. Can you explain to the court what that is?
So that is a measure of
Okay, so this is not pointless. This is determining whether or not. Okay. In 2012, it says right there at the bottom of the ticker, if you would read, Sir Brandon, in 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court said it's cruel and unusual to incarcerate a juvenile for life without the possibility of parole, except for very specific, irredeemable individuals. And so Michigan has taken that, passed some statutes, had some of its own court cases, and has narrowed this down to we need to have the state present clear and convincing evidence to overcome the presumption that we are not going to incarcerate people or juveniles without the possibility of parole. So the only purpose of this hearing is to determine whether or not Ethan will be eligible for parole at some later point, not whether he's going to get released, not whether he is going to get mental health treatment, whether or not he suffers from a mental health illness. It's whether or not he is potentially redeemable to the point that do we want to take away the keys of parole at some point? Or do we want to, at 25, 30, 40 years from now, say there's a parole board out there that might have the option to release him? That's all they're trying to do here today, is determine that. Does he
one's
get parole
anxiety,
at some point?
How anxious you are as a person. And as we know, anxiety has a direct effect on the brain.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, Matt.
Which is actually in the highest classification of anxiety.
And does that finding of high anxiety fit into all of the other evidence you were looking at? The journal, the text messaging between his friend, and what he self-reported to you?
That's
Yep,
correct.
that's exactly it, Brandon. Just to try to get
Let's
him
now
parole.
look at the brief psychiatric ratings.
The defense wants him to be able to get parole. That is the default. The presumption is that he gets parole as a matter of law, unless the state can prove that he shouldn't for some reason. And that's what the state's trying to do here. And the defense with their witnesses are trying to say, look, he can be redeemed. These are his issues. They can be fixed. He can be redeemed. So don't take away the keys to parole.
Scale. Can you explain what that is to the court and what your findings were?
Yeah, so this instrument looks at psychosis. And what is psychosis? Psychosis is a break from reality, as evidenced by auditory hallucinations and visual delusions. And he endorsed several of those items, indicating the presence of psychosis.
What?
Let's now look at the Kaufman Brief Intelligent Test. Can you explain what that is and what your
Send me an
findings were?
email or
Yes, the Kaufman
DM on
Brief
Twitter or
Intelligence Test is administered
I'm
to
interested
test
in this.
someone's level of intellectual functioning. The reason why I administered
Head
this
chopped off while
instrument
she was
is
running for help. What?
I wanted to find out why was he failing in school. In my testing, if you have a very or an intelligent person who is failing in the classroom, it's a signal that there is something going on. And when I administered this test, I saw that his verbal IQ was 104. So average, anything above 85 to about 100, 110 falls in the average range. So he has average verbal IQ, average nonverbal IQ, and overall average intelligence.
My wife came home with bleach wipes the other day, and I got really nervous, Dennis. Same situation.
You then went on to perform the Wide Range Achievement Test. Can you explain what that is and what your findings were?
Certainly, in the state of Michigan for special education testing, we administer the intelligence test and 2 achievement tests. So I administered the Wide Range Achievement Test just to see if I missed anything.
I'm sorry to keep pausing it, but I don't want to talk. But a lot of people are making good points in the chat, so I'll pause it when I want to make a comment. But Mary, you're exactly right. So there is a higher standard, and just because someone is eligible for parole doesn't mean that they're going to get parole. When you have the option for parole, the question is have you been reformed, and what evidence is there of that? And then, can you be a contributing member to society? Are you a risk to society? Does the parole board feel like you specifically have been punished enough? They also look to the deterrence of others. That's taken into consideration. There's a lot of stuff taken into consideration by the parole board. They don't just let you out, right? So they're going to do a full assessment of this kid 30 years down the road and see where he's at. And they might, and probably will, the first go around anyway, say, no, we don't think so. Do a little more time. Come back and see us next year. No, we don't think so. Come back again another year. That's how this goes. So just because there's an option for parole doesn't mean he's going to get it.
In terms of his ability to function in their classroom. And except for
Each
math,
wipes in a crockpot box.
most of the
Exactly.
scores were average to high average. Again, that's how we know that there's something else going on with someone who has average intelligence.
If you guys wouldn't mind
Let's
hitting the
move on
like
to
button,
the Weschler Individual Achievement Test. Can you explain what that
Sharing
is and what
the
your findings were?
stream
that
with
is
your
the second
friends,
of the
subscribe
two
if you haven't.
Test, the RAP and the
Help
WIAT.
the channel grow.
Again,
Would be
it's
great.
just to sort of double check your results. And again, the scores are consistent with someone who has the ability academically to function in the classroom, but wasn't.
Then finally, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. What is that and what were your results?
So that is, the MMPI is for, this one is for adolescents. It's regarded as the dean of tests to determine mental illness. This test has been
Yes. So he has already pled guilty. He was charged as an adult, not a juvenile. The juvenile system in Michigan is geared towards reform, probation, therapy, things like that. It's not punishment unless you really need the punishment. But he was charged as an adult, pled as an adult. So he's got to get the life sentence. That's going to happen. He's going to spend up to age 21 in a juvenile prison facility, I believe in the Thumb. Remember, we're Michigan, so we always up in the Thumb. And then once he's 21, he'll be moved to another correctional facility. After he serves a certain amount of time, I'm not sure exactly what that would be, 25 to 30 years. If he's eligible for parole, then he can apply for parole. Then the parole board will look at everything that he's got going on while he's been incarcerated. Did he get his GED? Did he go to therapy? Did he learn a trade? Did he get into fights? Are there any violations? Whatever it may be that they're going to look at. They're going to look at all of that. They're also going to talk to him. What are your plans for the future? What do you want to do if we do let you out? Things like that. And then there's the possibility that he could get out. But there's no recharging of him at 21 because he pled as an adult. He is in. He's just going to be moved from facility to facility is essentially what happens.
validated across various measures, and it's a test that psychologists use. On the table to the left, that is his PSY score. His score is 81. Anything over 60 means that the person has a number of those symptoms
Of mental illness.
Mhm. So his score is 81, indicating someone who has high degrees of paranoia and hallucinations.
Michigan has the highest number of incarcerated juveniles, well beyond their parole eligibility for committing murders. So although, again, it sounds like, oh, he could get out because, Arizona lets people out, Texas lets people out, whatever. Michigan has the largest number, to my knowledge, the largest number of juveniles still incarcerated after like 25, 30 years for murder. So I don't think he's getting out soon.
And then on the right, which is even more troubling, the table on the right, he has elevations above 60 in two key measures.
I'm
One
not getting
is
annoyed.
OCD, obsessive, compulsive, and anxiety.
I'm trying to be quick
And
because
I would love
we're
to explain what I
behind.
mean by that.
If you could explain obsessive compulsive.
We're
to the
behind
board.
by like 8 minutes,
So
and I've been trying to
There's
catch
a
up.
part of the
And
brain
I
called
want
the cingulate gyrus. It
to pause the stream and not talk over it. So I'm just trying to talk quickly. I'm not annoyed though.
comes from the
I like
front
the
of
questions.
brain
That's
to the
why I do
back of
this.
the brain. That is the brain gear shifter. It allows us to shift from one thing to the next. In Ethan's case, someone who scores highly on this measure, what it tells me that this person does not have the ability to shut off those thoughts. It's like being stuck on. So you're with these thoughts every single day, every single night. And we see that with people who have OCD. He also has very high levels of anxiety. And those
I didn't cover it because I was waiting for Julie Megan's mother to follow up with me because I didn't know if she wanted to participate or even Megan herself. And so it kind of put on the back burner. And then this came up. And so when this is done, I'm going to be covering her sentencing. And hopefully Julie and or Megan want to join me.
two
We could
can
talk about it.
hang together. And as you notice in his journal, you notice that repetition, that the voices don't stop. My brain is on fire. Well, when I tested his brain, it's very consistent with what he was writing.
Okay. Does the obsessive compulsive disorder explain the constant searches on internet to look at violent things or to research things or any type of preparation and planning?
Yes, ma'am.
So let's move to the summary of the testing results that you performed. Do you believe that Ethan is a highly intelligent person?
I do.
Do you believe that he suffers from debilitating anxiety?
I do.
Do you believe that he is and was severely depressed?
I do.
Do you believe that
To
he
a
has
degree of
features of
medical
obsessive
certainty.
compulsive disorder?
I do.
Were you able to determine that he was failing at school when, as you stated, he shouldn't have been?
I did.
And what exactly is your diagnosis for Ethan Crumbly?
So major depressive disorder, in addition to psychosis, as evidenced by his verbalizing of hearing voices and seeing things. And by the way, about 12.5% of people with major depression experience major depression with psychosis.
You have now had an opportunity after turning in your report to review the records from Dr. Kadir. She is the physician from the Easter Seals. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Would you agree with me that you have similar findings, but not
feel like
exactly the same?
The defense had such a
Do you have
great
an explanation
case
for that?
Yeah,
at the
that's
end
not
of day 2
an
until
unbelievable,
this guy dropping an
diagnosis.
egg just ruined it for me.
Yes. It's not an exact science, so you go based on symptoms. So Dr. Kadir, based on my review of her notation, diagnosed him with, I think, major depressive disorder and I think an adjustment disorder going on
With anxiety.
With anxiety, which is not unusual. But I believe as she continues, if she continues to treat him, once he has the depression and anxiety under control, if he's still verbalizing, hearing voices, and seeing things, then she may add that diagnosis. So it's not inconsistent.
Add the diagnosis of psychosis or something else?
Correct.
Of psychosis. Okay. So you have told us from your results that Ethan is of average, if not above average intelligence, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So shouldn't he have known better? Shouldn't he have not done this because he's a smart kid?
So unfortunately, intelligence, and this is critical, intelligence does not protect someone from mental illness. So being very intelligent doesn't mean that you cannot be mentally ill.
Do you have any real world examples?
I do. Robin Williams, very intelligent Hollywood actor, but he was mentally ill. How do I know that?
Yeah, because I watched him in a movie.
He committed suicide. Twitch. We've seen that publicly. A very talented man on Ellen DeGeneres' show. Extremely talented. I actually watched a video of him the day before he killed himself. He was dancing with his wife and daughter, and then the next day he drove to a hotel and killed himself. Mental illness is real.
Were you able to watch any videos that were provided to you from body cam footage of Ethan at the jail?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to play what is in my exhibits as S body cam jail footage. There are a few videos, but we have shortened them. This is sound, so I don't know if we can have your staff just make sure the sound is perfect.
Why didn't you save her? Why didn't you save her? Why didn't you save her, God?
Move to the next one.
You don't stop it. Why did you stop it? Why did you stop it? Why did you stop it? I know you stop it. Please 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 stop it. Why didn't you stop it, God? Why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you stop it, God? Why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you stop it? You let it happen. Why? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please, God. I'm sorry. Please, I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, God.
Rolling.
Stop it. You couldn't stop it, God, but you didn't stop it. And now we continue. It's holy. Stop it. God, stop it, please. Stop it, God. Stop it. Stop, God, God, stop.
Stop pushing forward.
Stop.
He's
God,
15.
stop, please, God. Oh, stop it. Stop it. God, stop. God, stop. God, stop. God, stop it, please. God, yes, stop it. I did stop it. Yes, you stop it.
Rifle back.
Yes, stop it. 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 Stop it. We can stop it. Yes, stop it. Yes, stop it.
Let's lay back. Let's lay back.
It's all we got. It's all it. 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 You can stop it. You can stop it. Don't stop it. Don't stop it. Stop it. Oh, why you stop? Oh, God, you didn't stop it. Please tell me. Oh, no, you didn't stop it. You didn't stop it. You didn't stop it. You didn't stop it.
I count three, you're gonna sit down. 1, 2, 3.
And then, so this is all after the shooting when he's in police custody. This is not before the shooting. I watched the preliminary examination several times of the parents, and nothing like this was ever brought out to exist prior to the shooting. So I want to make that clear. This is all taking place after the shooting.
Name call. Time. While you're listening.
You don't stop it. Why did you stop it?
Name
Why
call.
did you stop it?
Time.
Why did you stop it? Why don't you stop it? Please stop it. 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 Why did you stop it, God? Why? Why did you stop it? Why did you stop it, God? Why did you stop it? Why did you stop it? You let it after me.
All right. Doctor, what did we just witness?
Yeah, is it possible that he's feigning, malingering, maybe, right? I mean, we've seen it enough times in enough cases that we've covered.
So we witness a child in the throes of psychosis. But we just witnessed
He hasn't been diagnosed with that.
someone who's saying, God, why didn't you stop it? And that's exactly how psychosis works. You
Wait.
engage in an action, and somehow you don't understand the outcome of the consequences. He's having a panic attack and a break with reality.
We also hear him saying you could have saved her.
That is correct.
In any part of that video, do you see Ethan being violent?
No, ma'am.
He's going to be in prison. The only question is he going to get the opportunity for parole? Now, why, as defense, if you want parole at some point for this child's future, would you play this and talk about him being psychotic? I feel like that's the opposite of what you want, right? Unless they're trying to say, well, based on mental health, he did this and therefore mental health is treatable. I don't know. It just seems counterintuitive from my initial standpoint.
Are mental health issues perfect? I mean, he's obviously been on medication now for a period of time, and things like this obviously can still happen. What is your explanation to that?
So medications are not an exact science. There's different levels of titration. There are times when some medications work, and there are times when they don't always work, just like in the physical realm.
I want to move on to part 5. So you were able to look at the events leading up to the shooting, correct?
That is correct.
Did Ethan disclose to you a
I'll be right back,
situation
folks.
where he actually brought casings to school and displayed them on his desk?
He did.
Can you explain that?
Certainly, he indicated to me that he brought one live round, and actually my review of the records and with the detective that interviewed some of the students, one of the students did confirm that Ethan showed him a live round and shell casings. So I have no reasons to doubt what he said, that he placed some shell casings on the desk in his class, and the teacher walked by, didn't name the teacher, and I said to him multiple times, "Are you sure?" And he said yes.
You were made aware and you were able to see some interviews about the events of November 30th in the counseling office, correct?
That is correct.
And it was your understanding that he was caught looking at websites dealing with ammunition?
That is correct.
Were you able to look at the actual school assignment that was the cause of him being taken to the office that morning where he wrote certain things and drew certain things?
That is correct.
Were you also able to discuss with Ethan the video that the court has been shown that was filmed the night before?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've had an opportunity to review that video?
I have.
Can you explain that video or give it some context?
So this was a night before the shooting when Ethan recorded himself, appeared to have been using a cell phone in terms of what he was planning to do the following day. And doing certain parts of the video, he made references to demons. And then in the video, he said, "I am the demon." It just indicates the fragmentation in his head in terms of what was happening.
And what was your understanding about why he was outside at that point in time? What did he tell you had gone on in the home leading up to him being outside?
I think his parents had locked him out of the house, and they're taking some money from him.
And was that in relation to grades?
Yes, because he was failing some of his classes.
And how did he feel about that?
Terrible, in terms of how they were treating him.
The video that the court has viewed, and I know you have viewed, it seems just like a rambling of thoughts.
That is correct. Just sort of scrambled thoughts.
And do you believe that that is part of what mental illness can do to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk about the actual day of the shooting. Did Ethan ever tell you if he had been asked if he had a gun by any school professionals or the parents that day at school?
No.
And is it your understanding from speaking to Ethan that he was allowed to stay in school that day?
Is this a facetious comment or a serious comment? Because if it's a serious comment, I have some words.
In school.
And can you explain the situation involving his backpack or how he explained it to you?
So this is how he explained it to me after he was called down to the office. He left his backpack in the classroom. And then he indicated that, I think it was Ejak. I could be butchering his name. I do apologize for that. Went to get his.
You don't have to reload knives nor vehicles.
Ethan said, for the first time in his life, he felt relieved. He said he just knew that the sheriffs were going to burst into the office and arrest him because there was no way, after all that they saw, that they were not going to search that backpack. In fact, this is a comment he made that has stuck with me. He said one of the Hispanic students was suspected of using drugs, and he remembered them searching that kid's locker. And he felt fairly sure that they were going to search his backpack. When Ejak brought the backpack into the office, he made a comment. He said, "This is heavy. What do you have in here? Bricks?" And then Ethan said, all he had to do was just unzip that backpack, but he didn't.
So to the best of your knowledge, after speaking with Ethan and reviewing all of the records, the backpack was not searched, correct?
It was not searched.
So obviously at that point, Ethan had the opportunity to volunteer the information that he had a weapon in his bag. Would you agree with me?
That is correct.
Can you explain why you believe that did not happen?
He was in a state of ambivalence. Do I tell? Do I not tell? Do I do this? Do I not do this? What is going to happen if I tell? So that's the state of flux that he was in.
So I want to
But it's not the simplest answer. Occam's razor, yes, it says the simplest answer. If you hear hoofbeats, think horse, not zebra, because I'm not in Africa, right? That's Occam's razor. But is it really? Because I gave an example earlier of how this child could have earned money, given his dad money to purchase a vehicle. The vehicle would be titled in the dad's name, but it would have been his vehicle, right? Could post it all over Facebook and Instagram and say, look at my new vehicle, and then drive it to school, mow down intentionally a bunch of kids, killing 4, injuring 7, just as easily. So is it really taking away guns? Is that Occam's razor's answer? I don't think so.
put it all together for the court. So you've told us about a complex childhood full of trauma,
For example, see Daryl Brooks.
correct?
That is correct.
Violence in the home,
That is correct.
mental illness,
That is correct.
a lack of resources, no one's getting him the counseling that he needs,
That is correct.
neglect,
That is correct.
access to weapons,
That is correct.
in a school system with not enough counselors.
That
And
is
where did
correct.
that lead us?
Tragedy.
I want to move on to part 6. I know you've touched on quite a bit of this already. There's been testimony and there's been some argument about Ethan looking up or talking about going to prison. Is it normal that a 15-year-old would just be okay with the fact that he's going to do something that lands him in prison?
So teenagers go through a phase that is called personal failing. And if I may give you an example.
Sure.
A teenager may be driving 100 yards away. The light
You
is
got
about to
quiet
turn
all of a
red.
sudden.
They think
It's good.
that they can magically beat that red light and nothing bad is going to happen to them. It's because their brain, their prefrontal cortex, this is the brain's supervisor, is not fully developed just biologically and physiologically. The human brain, the prefrontal cortex, is not developed until about age 24 or 25. In Ethan's case, he had what is called arrested development.
Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. So chronologically, he may have been 15 at the time, but given the high levels of stress and complex trauma, his age was much younger than his chronological age.
You've been able to see through the text messages and actually in your interviews with Ethan, he reported that he was not sleeping and he was not eating. How does that tie into mental illness?
So the brain consumes about 20 to 30% of the calories that we consume. So whatever we consume, the brain consumes about 20 to 30% of that. So sleep deprivation.
In the first 2 or 3 seasons anyways, right?
Nutrition greatly impact the body. Our bodies were not meant to be in a state of high anxiety perpetually.
You've also been able to take a look at the Google searches that he was doing, and a lot of them are looking kind of for self-diagnosis, looking up what is depression.
It shouldn't. It has
Do
no
I have
limit.
ADHD? Do I have obsessive compulsive disorder? What do you make of that?
So here is a child who was just trying to make sense of his inner world. He couldn't get help from his parents, from the home system. He couldn't get help from the school system. He couldn't get to a doctor. He couldn't get to a counselor. So his last resort was to try to figure out what's happening to me. Is this normal? Am I depressed? Am I anxious? Am I a sociopath? Who am I? He's trying to make sense of what's going on within him.
You've also been shown a number of searches that were done on a particular website where very violent videos, actual murders, actual shootings are categorized and people can view them. What is your understanding of what that does, especially to an adolescent's brain?
So during adolescence, the person's brain is still in the formative stage. The neurons are still trying to connect. And if one spends an inordinate amount of time ingesting that type of content, without supervision, before long, it's natural to lose sight of what is real and what is not real.
Now, you've been made aware that there was a situation at the jail with a password and a tablet, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you explain what you believe to have happened in this situation?
Certainly. So Ethan was given a tablet, and because he's a fairly intelligent person, he was able to figure out the password and was able to go on the internet and use his tablet. And what he indicated to me is that although he had the urge to go to the live Gore site, he was able to restrain himself, which he's pretty proud of. 2 weeks, just did not go to the site, but he eventually went there.
And what does that, can you give that a context? What does that mean to you? Is he regressing? What, can you give an explanation to that?
So when you make a comparison of what he was doing prior, he was ingesting that content constantly, every day, hours and hours at a time. And in my mind, it shows progress, not perfection, but progress.
Are you certain about that?
Were you able to view the videos of Ethan killing baby birds?
I did.
Can you discuss the significance of that and what you think and how you think it fits into this case and his diagnosis?
Absolutely. I observed Ethan torturing baby birds. He wanted them to feel the pain that he was feeling inside. And I observed his persona. He was actually speaking to them in a different tone of voice, almost as a parent talking to a child. It's just a reflection of his,
I'm so
his
glad they
mental
didn't play that
impairment.
video.
What about, he talks about a desire to kill, or he wants to find another set of baby birds so that he can kill them. Can you explain that?
It sort of lines up with my testing of his brain. I indicated that his obsessive compulsive scales, I think the score was 8-1, indicating that this part of the brain, the cingulate gyrus, is on fire, meaning that it's hard to turn it off, and without appropriate intervention, without treatment and medications, that part of the brain is stopping on.
What about the fact that when the police come in, Ethan surrenders, and then in the police car acts normal? I mean, he's not talking to voices, he's not flailing about. Can you explain that?
Certainly, it's a phase called tension reduction.
Welcome. You are a new member. All right, welcome. I was just verifying because sometimes it pops up a little weird. Welcome to the membership. And on my YouTube, I'm trying to multitask because I got Jody Arias coming up at noon. I'm trying to set up as well. But welcome. Thank you for becoming a member. If you go on the YouTube main page, you see a membership tab. There's a link to my Discord, which is where we have all of our member content. Just make sure you drop your YouTube name in there because you'll get placed in a waiting room until we line up your name with your Discord name. And welcome. Thank you.
So tension is something that is built up. Anxiety, obsession.
Absolutely.
Anxiety.
Bigger
obsession.
and more of
I guess
them.
a good analogy is to think in terms of like a pressure cooker. It's on the stove and it's boiling, and there's tension building up in there. And one way for
Okay, so we don't troll. All right, so whoever called Klein a troll, yeah, no. We don't call people trolls. The only rule I have in my chat is no personal attacks. Everyone is welcome to their opinion, and that is all. No personal attacks on anyone at all in my chat. It's the only rule that we have, or anyone on my panel either. But there's nobody on my panel but me, so no personal attacks against me. That's my only
that
rule.
tension to go away is when you release that knob, the tension goes out and you revert to equilibrium. So tension reduction cycle.
So is your explanation then, once he carried out this plan that he was so fixated on, he had that sense of
I'll be right
reduction
back. I
or
deal with the boy.
accomplishment?
Absolutely. analogous to what we just witnessed. So the person in the videos is the same person in the courtroom. There's no difference. It is the same person.
I want to talk about the report that you authored. Obviously, in giving the history that you did, you've been doing these regular types of analysis outside of the courtroom for many years. You would agree with me?
That is correct.
So how is it that you came to start doing the work that you're doing now for Miller hearings?
So I think it was around 2019, an attorney reached out to me and asked me if I would do one of the Miller hearings.
Mhm.
And I was fairly confident in my ability as a psychologist, in my ability to clinically interview someone, in my ability to test someone. But in terms of crafting a legal report, I was a neophyte. It was not my area of expertise. And so I reached out to the attorney and said that if I'm to do this report, I'm going to need you to reach out to your sources, obtain copies of their report, make sure you get their permission, because I plan to use the rubric and extract some of the legal language in my report. And that is 2019 to 25 clients ago. And that is the exact format that I've been using.
And that's what you did in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you able to form an opinion whether or not Ethan Crumbly was mentally ill on November 30th of 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
He has major depressive disorder with psychosis, anxiety.
We're actually getting a diagnosis.
Obsessive compulsive disorder. He is mentally ill.
And in all of the testing that you did and the interviews, do you believe that there is the possibility of rehabilitation?
I do.
And can you explain that?
Certainly.
You can attack me if you want, Brandon.
I've worked in the field of brain injury for 25 years. I take pride in my work. I've treated people with stroke, CBA. I've treated people with anoxic brain injury, and I've treated people with mental health. And along with my team, we've been able to rehabilitate people. A number of my clients have had issues with the law, and through psychotherapy and
A change in society. We're seeing an uptick in violence across this society. Period. End of story. Regardless of the tools that are used to inflict that violence, and so we need a change to society.
support. They've made progress. Additionally, and this is important, in neuroscience, there is something called neuroplasticity. And that is the ability of the brain to create new pathways, to generate new neurons. You see this in stroke victims. The stroke on the left-hand side, this right-hand side neglect. But those are the people that I've worked with and taught them how to speak again and how to walk again and how to function. So absolutely, yes.
So people with mental illness, especially ones that do something, extremely serious that leads them down a path that they find themselves in prison. I know Dr. Keating touched on this a little bit, but you believe that, especially based on Ethan's age, that his brain can rewire and he can stop the behaviors that he was exhibiting previously. Is that correct?
That is correct. Ethan's brain is still maturing, and his brain probably will not reach full maturity for another 10 years.
Are the clinical opinions in your report based solely on the testing and your interaction with Ethan Crumbly that you yourself performed?
So my conclusions are based on my clinical interview of Ethan Crumbly and are based on the results from my testing.
I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
Cross.
Your Honor, the doctor's actually testified a whole lot of things are not in his report. And could we take a short break before cross-examination?
Sure, we'll go ahead and take about a 10-minute break. Deputies,
Okay.
if you could go ahead and take the defendant back downstairs.
We
To
are
those in the
about
gallery, please be seated until the defendant is
10
downstairs.
minutes behind, maybe a little less. So we'll speed up. All right. So direct is done. That was, in my opinion, not the most effective of
Thank you,
witnesses,
sir.
right?
Yes, please step down.
Underlying issue is whether or not the child is
We will stand in
redeemable
recess for approximately
at
10 to
some
15
point in the
minutes. Court
future,
stands in recess.
right?
All right.
Or I guess whether or not he's so irredeemable and corrupt that no parole should be available to him in the future. That's the question we're really here to answer today with this Miller hearing. As an overview, again, we have in the state of Michigan, we have a presumption based off of the Miller case, as well as some state statutes and other things, that a juvenile shall not be incarcerated without the possibility of parole until or unless the state can prove beyond clear and convincing evidence that the child is essentially irredeemable. And the state needs to bring a motion and present evidence of such irredeemability and convince the court of that. Otherwise, the child will be eligible for parole, even if he's sentenced to life for murdering 4 people. It's a very high bar. It's a very narrow argument that the state has. So at the end of the day, I don't know if they're going to get there. It depends on this judge. And this is a new judge, newish. He came in post-COVID, but I really had a chance to work in front of him, so I don't know anything about this judge. And this is in my county that I live and practice. So I'm somewhat familiar with the court. I know the court. I don't know the judge, though. I do know the attorneys involved. And it's just interesting hearing. But we have cross on this witness. This is the third export for the defense. The state has already presented their witnesses, and I don't know if the state is going to have rebuttal. So I was thinking this was going to be done today. This went a lot longer than I thought. It's only 10:22 right now, and we are caught up live. This is the live feed. So we are live now, and I'm thinking they're going to be done today at some point, but I'm not sure. I will, matter of housekeeping, if you are a new member, please check out the membership tab where I have a link to my Discord, which is where we do pretty much all of our member content. Last night, everyone was in a watch party. We were streaming some stuff and talking, and that's sort of the things that we do. But there's also extra content in there for the cases that we cover. For example, Letitia Stalk, there was various photographs and other things that didn't necessarily make it into the case that are sometimes interesting. And then there's also other channels, Nick Starov, the Broken Baker, Lefty, all have channels in Discord, and you can see some of the stuff that they're doing. There's like 40 or 50 different channels. So you can go into depth on various cases. You can chit chat on irrelevant topics and things like that. But it's a lot of fun in Discord. Let's see. So what you're saying is call a court. I was thinking about calling the defense attorney to see how many witnesses they have left. But I didn't, and I'm not going to, at least not right now, because she's obviously in court. And she's really the only one that would know. And the prosecutor, Karen, is not going to answer any questions. So I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. Also, at noon today, so in about an hour and a half, for those of you who don't know, on Tuesdays and Saturdays at noon Eastern, 6 p.m. Swedish time, no matter what's going on, we stop everything, and Nick Starov and myself stream the Jodi Arias trial. And so we are on the afternoon of day 11 today of the Jodi Arias trial. So we will be doing that. Tuesdays are usually our shorter day because there's usually trials and things going on. Saturdays are our longer days. But we will be doing a Jodi Arias trial at noon Eastern. So wherever we are in this, we'll pause it. We'll go do Jodi, and then we'll come back to right where we left off and get caught up. And we'll be all caught up by the end of the day. The court runs to 4:30 Eastern time. So we will be caught up with that. Oh, it's Tuesday. I can't stay till 4:30. I need this to end. I need this to end by like 3 at the latest. I'm really hoping. Tuesdays are bad days for me in the afternoon. So I'm really hoping this gets wrapped up. If for some reason it doesn't, I will I'll be back to carry on the stream later this evening. Hopefully it gets caught up though. Okay. So, with all the housekeeping stuff out of the way, if you are in chat and you have a question for me, and you ask the question, I try to answer them all. You don't have to pay for a question, although it helps. But if I skipped over your question, feel free to post it again. If it's been a while since you asked it and I obviously haven't answered it, it's because I missed it. I like answering your questions. So go ahead and post your question again and keep posting it until I eventually get to it. Let's see here. Is there any questions in the chat? And if you want to put a bunch of question marks ahead of it too, so I can see that, that would be very helpful. Especially when I'm talking. Sometimes I don't see the chat a lot. You do not want to read chat. What's going on in chat? What are you guys doing? I am a huge proponent of firearms and weapons of all sorts. I believe the Second Amendment had a very clear meaning. Yeah. Are words violence? Words are not violent. Let's see. Didn't say 18-year-old couldn't have handguns. Okay. Yeah. So obviously we're in a gun debate. Guns are lawful. Whatever you want to say. We have the Second Amendment. Guns are lawful. If we want to talk about the restrictions on firearms, that's a different story. There should be none, but there are some. The bottom line is, in the United States of America, guns are plentiful. Everyone should be carrying them, in my opinion. Everyone should be carrying multiple guns. I feel like if everyone had guns, there'd be a lot less gun violence because no one wants to shoot at someone that might shoot back, right? He is not in adult jail. He's actually in a juvenile facility. He's in a juvenile jail. Once he is sentenced, he will be moved to a juvenile prison. He'll be sentenced to, he'll be in the custody of the Department of Corrections. And that will be in the Thumb area. But right now, he is in Oakland County at a juvenile facility because he is a juvenile. And even if he is sentenced as an adult, he will still remain in a juvenile facility until he reaches the age of 21. And he's 16 right now. So he's got 5 years left in a juvenile facility where he'll be able to get his GED and other things like that until he moves on to the adult facility, where then hopefully he gets, I don't know, whatever sort of mental health treatment and things that he needs. Where do babies come from? Salvador, we were going to have that conversation in Discord last night, and then you fell asleep. So we're going to have that conversation again in Discord. And I do notice, I had my interview last night, and I mentioned that I was going to publish a book, and I saw that was a topic in Discord as well. I need to reach out to Steve Gosney about publishing my own book, because I don't know if I want to go through a publisher, but I have an idea. Let's see. Healthy debate is absolutely welcome, Josie. Yes, there's no personal attacks. We're not calling names. Just no personal attacks. We don't need to get nasty with each other. I bring on people on this channel, on the panel, that I specifically bring on because they have an absolute polar opposite view, politically or otherwise, because I like discussions. It helps us both grow, understand what other people think. You could get some good ideas. Like C had, a really good comment earlier. It was, I never thought of it that way. That's a good point. And that is the purpose of discussions in my chat or on this panel. But we don't get that if we are just going at personal attacks. So we don't do that. It's my only rule. No personal attacks. We're not going to be yelling at people in chat or anything like that. Offer your opinion. If you have reasonable discussion, I'm fine with that. I would agree. Yeah, I mean, so the fundamental question is, if, like Broken Baker says a lot, he's Danish, right? And he's like, yeah, we don't, we love guns in Denmark. They're banned, and just the bad guys have them, but we love guns, right? Because they're absolutely banned in Denmark and Sweden too. The only people with guns are the bad guys, according to Baker. Anyways, I don't know. Jimmy is cute. Baker, does anyone other than the bad guys have guns? I'm gonna send you a link, Baker, because I have questions for you. I don't know if you're available or if you're at the gym getting all buff. I'm sending you a link. Hunters have guns. Okay, hunters have guns. But you have to have a license to be a hunter and have a gun, right? I'm pretty sure. And you can only have certain guns, like long barrel guns. You can't have pistols. I carry it almost everywhere I go these days. I do too, and because I don't trust anybody. And I'm like a Boy Scout, right? I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Late Nate, he has some real great takes on Joe's stream yesterday. I came in at the tail end of Nate's appearance on Joe. I know they were talking about elections and stuff, but I don't know what he said before that. But if you want to hear a real good constitutional issue and Second Amendment, anyways, check out Uncivil Law. He broke down the Second Amendment really well. And I liked it a lot. As far as a moral issue, I'd have to listen to Nate and see what he has to say. But as far as a legal issue, Uncivil did a good breakdown on that. I unfortunately lost all of my guns in a boating accident last year. That's odd. How is it that we lost firearms in a boating accident? Also, I do have a stream I did maybe a month or so ago, but Detroit wanted to create a gun-free zone. And I actually brought on Detroit Police Commissioner Willie Burton. And there were a couple other people that I don't really know. It's the only time they've been on my channel. I believe they're part of the Libertarian Party. And then Damien, who's a friend of mine, and he's politically opposite of me, polar opposite of me. He's the yang to my yin. And we had a really healthy debate about it. And I would encourage anybody, if you want to know my opinions on some of these things, or at least get counterpoints too, because we have counterpoints on this position. It was a good stream, and it was productive. It wasn't people yelling at each other and things like. I don't like that kind of political debate. But I found it interesting to see what a police commissioner in Detroit thinks of gun-free zones. And we talk about the red flag laws and things like that, especially in the wake of the Oxford school shooting and the MSU shooting and things like that. So it was an interesting discussion. And I don't think that video really has enough views for the content that we were covering. So I'm going to encourage people to go check it out again. What's going on? Oh, they're back now. Okay. I don't know what they were doing. It was a great stream. Yeah, see, and Jamie was like really skeptical because she's like, I don't want to watch a political stream. That's going to be horrible. And then she ended up liking it. So I'm going to post, I'm going to drop a link to it in the chat just because I feel like it should have gotten way more views than it has. And then you guys can decide for yourself and let me know if you like it or not. I just got to find it now. Let's see here. Oh, it was before Father's Day even. That was a while ago. I have too many videos. There it is. Share, copy. All right, I'm going to put it in the chat here if you guys want to check it out. Cool. Hello, hello.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm going to a barbecue in my whole HOA, so that's going to be fun.
Isn't every property owned by an HOA?
No, you can own your own property. We're not that social just yet.
Are we going to cover the Brian Kohlberger case? Yes, I will be covering it. I've done a couple of, or maybe one stream on it. Actually, I've been on other panels talking about it. But I will be covering it if it is not directly opposite Sarah Boone. Sarah Boone currently scheduled to begin October 2nd. I'm absolutely covering that case. Brian's case is also scheduled to go October 2nd. And so if they happen to be streaming on top of each other, I will be covering Sarah Boone, not Brian Cronenberg. case, but if they are not opposite each other, I will be covering it. Yes, definitely. It's an interesting case because it really comes down to the DNA on that. But so, Baker, have you been watching this hearing thus far?
On and off, because that expert is just ambient in a human form.
What about the dropping of the egg? I mean, how credible was that, right?
As I wrote in your chat, that you forget that our egg has really, it's kind of like evolution fixed the problem because it made our brains really big so we can make complex thinking. And then it put a big helmet around it so it could stand falling on the ground. And of course, you can get concussions, you can get brain injuries, but he was what, 16 around the time? You're made of rubber at 16, because I fell a lot when I was 16.
Right? Yeah. I mean, me too, like over the handlebars of my bicycle and everything else, right? It's amazing.
Probably a bit drunk. I jumped out of a car once going.
Drunk at 16. This is Denmark, ladies and gentlemen.
I started when I was 13. So, but just to talk about how many guns we have in Denmark, they claim that this is from 2019. They confiscated around 10,000 illegal weapons, and in Denmark we have American has the most. We have one gun per 10 Danes.
One gun per 10 Danes. And I think it's like 3 guns per every U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And the problem is, everything I want to have more than a pocket knife, I have to go and get a license for. I can have if I'm a Boy Scout or if I'm a fisher or something, I need it for my work, but if I forget it in my car after my fishing trip and I go to work the next day, earlier it was an automatic 7-day in prison. Because we had so many stabbings.
I once told the story about having a machete in the back of my truck, and I will say it in a second, but Baker, how do you say this name? Is this a Danish name?
Kleine Flöte, probably German.
Okay.
Small flöte, I don't know what that is. It's kind of kleine flute. That's a small flute.
I wanted to point this out because you guys are all getting on him for his gun position. However, he believes exactly like I do with regard to Brian's case, right? They were under a lot of pressure to get somebody. They probably have the wrong guy, but they are going to create all the evidence they need to convict this guy because the timeline itself doesn't line up for me. So we can have reasonable discussions on various topics and agree and disagree on various topics. And we are all friends here. That is what the goal of this channel is to be.
And as a thing most people should learn is to disagree is not to argue. I can disagree with a lot of stuff that Americans does, that Danish people does, and then we can have a argument about it, or we can have discussion about it. I can learn something and you can learn something, or we could just disagree and say, well, I'm so smart and all the other people are stupid. And
my 2 favorite subjects are religion and politics. And people can say I'm conservative. Someone questioned if I was liberal. I'm actually a Jeffersonian. But my wife,
that's a museum. You can't be a museum.
My wife is liberal. She's a European liberal Democrat here in the U.S. Her vote's going to cancel my vote out every election, whether it's for governor, president, or everything else, whether we're living together or not, whether we're married or not. So what's the big deal? Everyone was like, how could you marry a Democrat or something? I'm like, why? I mean, we're not,
and I know
it's not like that. I don't know.
It's
like we literally had 2 different political signs up in the yard. I thought it was awesome.
And I know it's different in the US, but we have 13 parties in our National Assembly.
Yeah,
I have moved from rather far right. Then in my older age, I've become more liberal and more moderate. I'm probably some kind of conservative with a inkling to the nationalist. I like God country and stuff like that. And I was married to a very socialist wife, and my mother ran for the Socialist Party as I ran for the right wing parties, and we always were able to discuss. I hate people who think that having a different political opinion means that you're bad. It's just different values.
Yeah, no, it is. It's different values. Like people put certain emphasis on certain things, and depending on where your emphasis is, that will be where you go. Because no political party is ever going to match your position on every single point, right? And so you kind of play the averages. And
Especially yours,
there's
where
some
you have
things that
so
the
few.
Republicans do that I don't like. There's some things that the Democrats do that I don't like. There's some things that the Democrats do that I do like. But I wish there was a third party that thought exactly like me and they had majority control, but that's not reality.
No,
You know?
I always said it would be way easier if I was just the dictator of Earth, because I have all the right ideas.
Exactly. I
All
know,
other
right?
people are just stupid.
Baker for dictator of Earth. We've got to start that campaign. Vote for Baker.
Yeah, I'm writing candidate for next year's president election in the U.S. I can't run because I'm not a natural born citizen, but we'll figure it out.
But we have we have political debates, and my wife loves when Damian comes over because then it's 2 against 1, and they think that they won the argument just because they have the majority vote. But they didn't win. They're wrong still. But yeah, I mean, I have fun with it. And like I said, my 2 favorite subjects are religion and politics. We might have to do a religion page, but I'm respectful, right? Like if you saw me on Joe last night, I don't get down on people's religion. I have questions. And my wife thinks it's weird, but I like to wander up to people that are of different religions and just talk to them about it, even if I don't know them. Isn't that weird? Because I truly do want to know more.
It's the funny thing about you Americans, because I would believe Nicholas is kind of the same. We never talk about personal religion. Never.
Well, that's
It's
that's very waspy of you, like WASP, New England Americans.
Yeah,
We don't
but
talk
it's
money,
just a
religion, or
personal.
anything.
In Denmark, religion has, well, right now we're having a bit of a problem as Sweden have with a certain religion we can't talk about, and I can't make a video about it because then I would get yeeted away from YouTube. But that's it's just so. For Danes, you do you. It's kind of like peens. Everyone is allowed to have one. You just don't go around show it.
Well, in Denmark, I feel like you do.
Well, only on the beaches where it's allowed. But and that's the big fundamental difference when we're talking to other people, because a lot of people think, well, how can you in the US you can run on God and stuff like that? We have a Christian party, and they have no backup. I think they got like 1.2% in the last election, and even them, we don't have a big right to life, not right to life, pro-life or pro-choice or whatever it's called in the US. It's just not a discussion you have. Now they're beginning to do this stuff like they did in the US with
Well, we
moving
could talk about that. I mean, one of the biggest issues with that, right, is that they try to wedge it into the Constitution as a fundamental right. The
Yeah.
thing is that so we're set up as a democracy, right? People have representatives that pass laws and make laws and policy and things like that. When you put something into the Constitution and say this shall not change, you're actually removing that very issue from democracy, right? It's no longer a democratic thing. People can no longer choose for themselves how to govern themselves. It is literally removed from the very democratic process that we all say we love, right? And so you want those things to be very limited, and you want those things to be something that matter, because it's like the rule book to Monopoly, right? If there are no rules, then it's chaos on the board. But you need those rules in order to make the game playable, even just playable. And so those rules that are in the Monopoly game are unchangeable, right? Now, you guys can agree to buy and sell and trade properties or whatever, but you can't change the fundamental rules or else you can't play. So the Constitution is there to set up those fundamental rules. We're going to have states, right? Those states are going to send representatives. We're going to have freedom of the press and the right to free speech, because that is fundamental to the game. We're going to have the right to bear arms because that's fundamental to the game. We're going to have the 10th Amendment. Anything that's not specifically designated to the federal government are for the states to decide and determine, because that's fundamental to the game. It's these fundamental things, the order and the rules of our system, that need to be in there. Not every right needs to be in there. There's tons of rights that we have that are not contained in the Constitution. We still have those rights because we've decided to pass a law granting those rights. And so just because it's not in the Constitution doesn't mean it's a right. And just because it's a right doesn't mean it should be in the Constitution. So that's my position on that.
Yeah, and again, I know I used to watch Crowder a lot, and he's always talking about, oh, we're the only one who have freedom of speech. We only have because we have the Constitution. Yeah, you can say that, but again, we have a freedom of expression as well, bound by the same laws as you. I can't say that I want to do something to you right now, because that would be a threat, and that's illegal. I can't, as a protest, go to your house and make it the summer of peace, because again, that would be making harm to others. But I'm allowed to demonstrate in front of your house and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people, because they want to be right, so they don't listen, and they think, well, we're perfect and we have all. And you should see the coverage of an American election in Denmark. Bernie Sanders would be in Denmark, middle of the road.
Yeah.
So even a left-wing Republican is as close to the painter from Austria as you can get.
Yeah, but everyone's on a spectrum, right? I mean, everyone's on a spectrum. It just depends on what the background is. Let's go. Brandon says, my general stance is to abort all babies you want. Just make it legalized murder. And stop texting me or taxing me to death and leave me alone. Yeah, I agree too. If you want abortions, then have your abortion. Just understand what it is. But I am a proponent of the states' rights. That's why I say I'm a Jeffersonian. Thomas Jefferson was a huge fan of the idea that the more local the government, the louder your voice is. And we want citizens with the loudest voice possible. So most of the control should be at the state level, not the federal, because my voice is louder at the state level. It's even louder at the county, and even more so at the local, city level. So we want the most control, the most local it is. And that's actually how Michigan internally is structured. We're very much locally controlled, but the nation should also be that way. So let the states decide. Is my position.
I've been in so many arguments because so many Danish said, "Oh, that now it's totally illegal and they can get prison and stuff." I said there are up to, I believe it's 3 or 4 states where you can unalive a baby up till moment of birth. I think it's Oregon and
that's yes, yeah. Well, but that's a moral question, and it should be up to the citizens of that state to decide.
And
right?
I said that's the state right. The difference is there's other states that say, well, life is sacred.
And everyone who wants the states to be all the same misunderstands the way this system is set up. Look at Europe, right? Denmark is different from Sweden, which is different from Germany, which is different from France, but they're all united economically under the EU. That's how our system is supposed to be operating. Nicholas, thank you very much for the 20 crown, Swedish krona. Super chat. Those rights sound a lot like privileges. Well, the difference between a right and a privilege is merely the ability for the state to take it away. Fundamentally, that's the only difference. And so if it is placed in the Constitution, it cannot be taken away. If it's not placed in the Constitution, it can be taken away. And so the idea is we're going to limit those things, not only because they're rights, right? Because that's not the issue. The test is whether or not it's fundamental to the system operating. That's why it's in the
You all may be
Constitution.
seated, and good morning again. Dr. King, if he's still in the room, Dr. King, you may retake the stand, sir.
Sorry to go on a political rant, but that's where we went.
Yeah, and as Mayor said, in Denmark, we have the 12-week abortion limit.
Sir, you may
But
be seated. You're
left-wing
still
parties
under.
are trying to make it to, I think, mid-second trimester now.
Cross.
Good morning, Dr. King.
Good morning, sir.
Dr. King, you're here because your job is to help the defense establish mitigating factors for this defendant, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're familiar with the Miller factors.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, you note that on the first page of your report, the defendant was referred to you for an evaluation focused particularly on the sentencing factors outlined in Miller versus Alabama, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you say that the Miller factors and mental illness, you say supports a sentence of other than life without parole, true?
Yes, sir.
You know that the Miller factors are incorporated into Michigan law.
We might have to have a
Are you
stream
aware of
on
that?
this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you tell us what the 5 factors are?
So,
Nicholas, did you send me a
Immaturity.
thumb?
age, person has to be younger than 18. Impetuosity, transient recklessness, and ability to extricate oneself from a dysfunctional family.
Anything else, doctor?
I probably missed a couple. I didn't memorize them.
Okay, so doctor, in fact, under the law, there are 5 factors. First is chronological age, hallmark features among them, immaturity, impetuosity, failure to appreciate risks and consequences. Does that sound right?
That's about right.
So most of what you described goes to that first factor. The second is the juvenile's family and home environment. And you talked about that, the inability to overcome his circumstances, right?
Yes, sir.
There are 3 other factors: the circumstance of the homicide offense, the incompetencies of youth, which affect how the juvenile might have been charged or convicted of a lesser crime, and the possibility of rehabilitation, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Doctor, when were you retained in this case?
I think it was contacted on or around, and my timeline could be off. I want to say in November. It was just around Thanksgiving of 22, I believe. Again, my timeline could be off.
And you were provided some materials to review,
Yes, sir.
and then you
Thank you,
interviewed the
T.
defendant.
I did.
Over how many sessions?
I believe over 6 sessions.
And can you tell us when those were?
Okay, I'll take care of it.
So I did not memorize the date. I think the first time I met the defendant would have been around January 4th or 5th. I think that is the first time I interviewed him. I interviewed him twice virtually, and maybe 3 or 4 times after. The last time I interviewed him was probably July, I think 10th or 11th. I don't have the access to my calendar, so I didn't memorize those dates.
Okay, doctor, what do you have with you today? Before you move on, the first meeting you said that was on January 4th or January 5th, was that of 2023?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And then your last meeting, of course, would have been in 2023 as well, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Doctor, what do you have with you today?
I have my PowerPoint.
For at least a minute, then let it
What?
cool. Boiled or bottled water should be used in drinking, making
Well, that's not right. Why are we jumping here? That's weird. Why are we? Oh my God. I hate this. Well, see, this is why I want to get my own cameras. This is why. All right, let's stupid. I was
But
well, you can keep talking while I'm looking.
to understand this expert correctly, it is this guy just need some training with his mental capacities, then he can be on parole, and in 25 years he can be a successful member of society again. So we shouldn't take away his ability for parole.
That is the fundamental idea behind this, and I am a huge proponent of that. I don't want to take away.
No, that's
So,
kind of like the
Dr. King,
Danish
you have
way
your
to
report
see
in front of you?
it. Rehabilitation.
I do.
And so we're clear
Unless
that's
you're
your
really, really, really,
report
really
dated June
bad.
16th, 2023, and you sign it on page 69.
And that's what they're trying to say, that he's really, really, really bad.
Correct?
Yeah, because he
Alright.
played
Turn
computer
to
games.
I will say that one of the big fundamental Michigan cases that addressed this issue, it was a 15-year-old with carjacking and shot and killed 2 people, and to steal their car, and literally went on a joyride and then dumped it. And he was found to be eligible for parole, even too. So it was essentially a thrill kill, right? A thrill kill was still eligible for parole because he was 15 at the time. So take that into context with this. I would say he should be eligible for parole.
Page 3, Doctor, does
What-
that
what would
help
they,
refresh your recollection?
25
Tracking
years,
the
20
dates
years,
that
how
you
long
interviewed
would
the defendant?
it normally?
I don't know. I'll have to
Oh.
look. Yeah, I don't want to say the wrong time.
I do.
Okay, so was your first meeting with him on December 15th of 2022?
Farrell's getting feisty.
That is correct.
She's been
Morning,
on.
Hotel
you
Chicken.
conducted a structured interview on January 5th, 2023.
I'm going to grab a coffee
That is
because
correct.
before we
And you did
Go to
an
barbecue.
evaluation of competency to stand trial on January 11th of 2023.
That is correct.
Okay, and as to the other 3 dates, you're not able to give us those today.
Yes, that is correct.
That's been the way it's been phrased.
And Doctor, you did some testing and then you
Or
did some
presented in the
research
media.
yourself, correct?
That is correct.
But I don't
Doctor,
see
in the
that.
timeline that was in the presentation,
And real quick, the parents have a lot of conversations with other people about getting this kid help. They're talking about equine therapy, getting him into counseling, trying to find a friend or a hobby for him to do. So the parents were engaged.
that was put up on the
in
screen,
my
it didn't include the dates of your reports. You prepared 2 reports, correct?
I prepared an initial report because if my memory serves me correctly, this hearing was supposed to have been.
I don't
held,
know, Matt.
I think early in May
1st.
1st. And then I was told that there was an adjournment and so here we are today.
Right. Okay. So, but in your timeline, it didn't include the dates of the reports. And in fact, the first report came partway through that timeline. Would you agree? And then the last report came in June.
That sounds about right, sir.
So, Doctor, on page 3 of your report, again, we're talking about your June report. You refer to it on page 2 as a complete list of records relied on and reviewed, correct?
What page is that?
On page 2, you reference, it's in the first paragraph, partway down, a complete list of records reviewed and relied on is listed beginning on page 3 of this report.
I see that.
Okay. And then you see on page 3 of your report, you list a number of things, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Dr. King, you testified to a number of things on direct that don't appear in that list. Can you tell us what those are? What other things that aren't on this list you reviewed and considered?
So, for instance, Dr. Kadir's report from Easter Seals, which is comprised of 1,310 pages. I believe I only got those, I think, last week.
Okay.
And Ms. Lofton, of course, has sent me updated information. I apologize, I've not been able to memorize information. We're talking about voluminous pages of information.
Okay, so what I want to know about, Doctor, is things that you had at the time of your June 16th report that you did not list. So, for example, you said in your direct testimony that you interviewed a neighbor. You recall testifying to that?
Yes,
And that's not listed in your source of information, is it?
That is not listed here. I do not see it here.
Okay, in fact, when did you conduct that interview?
Probably it was about, I think about 2 months ago, and again, my timeline could be off. I don't have my calendar in front of me, sir, so I'm not able to give you that exact date.
Doctor, you made no reference to that in your report, did you?
It's not in my sources of available information.
Is it referenced anywhere in your report?
I don't see a reference here, sir.
Okay, but I'm not, there are a bunch of things you referenced that aren't listed in your sources, and we'll talk about that. What I'm asking you is, did you make reference to your interview with the neighbor anywhere in your report? Is there any way I would have known that about that before today?
Yes, so can I explain?
Please.
So you have, sir, a copy of my PowerPoint?
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, I apologize for that.
So it's not mentioned in your report. Did you document that interview with the neighbor in any way?
I did.
And do you have that documentation with you today?
It's not in my report, sir.
Okay, thank you. Do you have documentation of that anywhere? Do you have notes? Did you write a short report? Did you report that to council? Do you have anything that reflects your interview with the neighbor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have that with you today?
I do not.
Doctor, you also referenced text messages between the parents, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's not listed in your source of information either, is it?
It is not listed.
Okay. And you don't reference that in the report, do you?
That is correct.
Okay. Doctor, you testified about reviewing the defendant's internet searches, correct?
That is correct.
And in fact, you mentioned something about researching something about a dog, right? About burying the dog.
That is correct.
Okay. You talked about he's got to go out to the shed and bury the dog, right?
That is correct, sir.
And he was researching how to do that.
That is correct.
And that's the same shed where he tortured the baby birds, correct?
I don't know that to be a fact, but if you say that is the case, I don't know that to be a fact.
So, doctor, you have something that no one else in this courtroom had. You had access to all the information you wanted, and you got to interview the defendant. Did you not ask the defendant about where that torture took place?
The torture of,
The birds.
I think he said it took place in the shed. I don't know if there's multiple sheds. I've never been to the home, sir, so I honestly don't know.
So, doctor, I just asked you about the torture, and then you said the torture of what? Are you aware of torture of anything other than birds?
I just wanted to have clarification from you, sir, just before I answer the question.
That's fine. Are you aware of any other torture committed by the defendant?
Besides the birds, I don't think so. Or at least I don't recall of any of them.
Doctor, you also mentioned that you reviewed text messages over a period of months between the defendant and his friend B. Is that right? Is that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
In your report, doctor, you reference a subset of those, right?
Do you have a page for me?
So, doctor, you can do two things. One is, why don't we look at page 3, the 5th bullet point up from the bottom, and you list the series of dates. Text messages obtained by Paulette Lofton between the defendant and his friend B dated April 5th, 2021 to April 7th of 2021, right?
Okay.
But you're telling the court you, in fact, reviewed a lot more text than that. You just don't reference them in your sources, correct?
That is true.
Okay. And then, doctor, on pages 8 through 22, 8 through 21, you include a series of text messages. You know about how many those are?
How many text messages?
Yeah, that you include in your report.
Oh,
If I say roughly 200, I don't need an exact number. Does that sound about right?
The dog died of old
I would not
age.
disagree with you.
Okay.
There's nothing to indicate the
And
child.
doctor, you'd agree with me, those text messages that
This
you
expert
specifically pasted into your
doesn't
report are
seem
all
that
from
good.
one day.
No, like I said, the state or the defense was doing really good with their prior two experts, and this guy is just not on it. He does this assessment without doing in my opinion, the appropriate evaluation. He dropped a freaking egg in court to symbolize something. I don't even know. It was dumb.
that was on the level of throwing an iPhone around over the weekend. It's just stupid because everyone in your age can remember this is your brain on meth or whatever it was.
Yeah, right. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. That's the kind of stupid thing. Your brain is not an egg. Your skull is not an eggshell. This is not relevant. This was just dumb.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, this is cross-examination now, Rob. By Lefty.
As far as I can see, sir, yes.
Doctor, you looked at some emails, and then you looked at something, assignment from Mrs. Kubina that you referenced. Those also are not listed in your source of information, are they?
They're not.
But you did review them and consider those.
I did.
We're on TV.
And then Dr. Aniker's report is listed in your sources, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And you reviewed that entire report, correct?
The report of Dr. Aniker?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you considered that in your analysis. It was part of your review and your conclusion. Is that correct?
I did.
I agree, Matt.
So, Doctor, we talked about the text message you reviewed. You also reviewed some videos, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what videos did you review?
I reviewed the videos of the actual shooting. I reviewed the videos of the bird and the video of Ethan taking a fall in the diner. And I believe
This is the
4 or
equivalent of saying
5
I watched
other
Johnny
videos.
Depp's movie and I can determine his personality from that.
You
Right?
can't determine brain injury by a slip and fall. You can't even
Right.
see an impact.
I
It's-
saw him fall and I watched the shooting.
Yeah, and again, if he had a traumatic brain injury with a lingering effect, why haven't they taken him to the hospital?
Yeah.
Have-
Where
have
are
you
the
co-
brain scans? Where's all this stuff?
It's just like the guy we watched the last week with the traumatic brain injuries that was very severe, but not really. There was no photos, and yeah, he had some cognitive problem and had a hard time concentrating.
Wait, Johnny doesn't have scissors for hands. Yeah, no, this is the same type of stuff. This is nonsense.
From
It's a
the
bad
Oakland
witness.
County Jail.
Okay, and Doctor, do you also review the video that the defendant took the night before the shooting?
Yes, I did.
Doctor, regarding the diner video, when I watch it, it doesn't seem you can see in the video whether the defendant hits his head or
I
not.
gotta
Are you
make a phone call.
were you able to see that in the video, or did you get that from the defendant?
Can you rephrase that question, please, sir?
When I watched the video from the diner, I actually didn't see the defendant hit his head. Maybe I missed it. But are you saying you can see that in the video, or that's what the defendant told you?
I'm wondering if you missed it, sir, because based on my review of it, that is what appeared to have happened, and he was helped up, and then he fell again and had to be helped up. That's how I saw it.
You prepared. We talked about 2 reports, Doctor, and the first report is dated January 27th of 2023. You know, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 63. Can you take a look at that?
One moment, please, sir.
It's really bad when 2 seconds into the cross-examination, you're just sitting here and
Doctor,
thinking,
I'll go
well,
through that with you a little bit, but does that look like your
this expert
previous
isn't
report?
really an expert. He's just making stuff up. To make it fit.
I do have an updated report, June 16th, so these two, this is an updated of what I did initially.
Correct. So I received 2 copies of your report. The first one is the one you're looking at now, Exhibit 63, and the other is the June 16th report. And that sounds right to you. You did 2 reports.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you agree this is the first one?
Yes, so I'm a little confused because I'm under the impression that the June 16th report supersedes the January 7th report because the June 16th report has information.
Yeah, Iris, I know he's an expert for
Well,
hire, and
yeah,
as I said,
the
I'll
January-
do it for
Okay. That's
2,500
important,
an hour
Doctor.
too.
It's information you didn't have, and we're going to talk about that.
But again, why
All right.
why isn't
Doctor,
it
are there
compared?
differences between the two reports?
Yes, sir, there are differences.
Okay. Can you tell me what those are? You know what, Doctor, I want to step back for 1 second. Let me withdraw that question. We'll come back to that. Do you know when that report was finalized? Because it's dated January 27th, 2023. I didn't receive it until April. Do you know when you finalized that version?
Sir, I'm not able to keep that timeline in my head. I apologize that I can't memorize the timeline when the report was completed, sir.
So, Doctor, I'm not worried about memorizing the timeline. I'm just asking if you know about when this. So you agree you were going to testify on about May 1st for the Miller hearing when it was originally scheduled, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So did you complete your first report in January, a few months before the Miller hearing, or did you finish it in April or sometime in between?
I know it was completed before May 1st, but exactly when, I don't know, sir.
Okay, a couple weeks before?
Okay,
Okay, so when you submitted that report at that time, you thought that was your final report and you were going to come to court and testify on May 1st with that report, correct?
that was my understanding, sir.
And at that point, you've been retained since you think November, right?
I was contacted in November, and I believe I was retained shortly after.
Okay, and you know you were retained by December 15th because you were meeting with the defendant by then, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at that point, Doctor,
I'm
had you been
muted.
given access to everything you needed?
Damn it. I was going to say, stupid work getting in my way. Did I miss anything exciting? Was there another egg drop or anything?
No, they're just asking about 2 different reports and why they are different and what the differences are between them and when he was hired.
Oh,
So-
okay.
And he
December
doesn't know anything. It's kind of like the Murdoch expert again, where they don't know anything on cross. They know everything when they're
In the
taught what to say, but they fall apart on cross.
Yes, excited. We got it. We got it.
Or you wanted to see for your report?
I was given access to information. I don't know that I was given access to everything because obviously since then, I've been given additional information.
Okay. And at that point, Doctor, if you look at your first, or the partial paragraph at the bottom of page 1 of the January report, it said you'd spent 16 hours interviewing the defendant, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then after you submitted that report, this hearing was adjourned, right?
That is correct.
And then you spent about another 6 hours with the defendant. In your June report, it says you've spent now 22 hours with him. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right.
All right, Doctor, I asked you about the differences in the report. Can you go over those with me?
Are you asking me to tell you the differences in these 2 reports?
Yes, sure. Yes, Dr. King.
I'm not sure if you want me to go through page by page. So their first report has 6 to 9 pages. And I think my,
Your second report also has 69 pages, Doctor.
6 to 9 pages. So what parts do you want me to go through, sir?
I'd like to know what you changed between the January report and the June report.
Well, Iris, you get more jobs if you do stuff like that.
Does Ethan have private attorneys? These are
Right,
court
so doctor, as you
appointed.
sit here right now, you're not able to quickly tell me what changed.
Yeah, we're looking at almost 70 pages or single spaced. It will take me a long time to compare these two reports and go through line by line by line.
Would you agree, doctor, there are not a lot of differences? Would you agree with me?
I am not able to answer that question, sir, because I don't know the answer.
Okay, but they're both your reports, doctor. And you had an additional couple of months when the hearing was adjourned to prepare another report, right?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying you don't remember what you did in addition to your first report to come to your second report.
What I am saying is that between May, for instance, between May and July, I have met with Ethan Crumpy.
You spent another 6 hours with him, right? So, doctor, look at
Before you
the.
move on, did you meet with him for 6 hours through May and July?
Approximately.
Yes, they have private retained
So, doctor,
counsel.
I
I'm
want
not
you to
sure
look
how
at
they're
page
paying
one of
for
your
that.
June report, and I want you to look at the second sentence. It starts on December 1st, 2021. The defendant was booked at the Oakland County Jail after bringing a 9mm handgun to Oxford High School, where he allegedly shot and killed 4 of his classmates. Do you see that?
Are you reading from the January report?
June report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll allow the egg
Can you
demonstration.
repeat that?
Yes, I want you to look at the June report and see that you said that the defendant allegedly shot and killed 4 of his classmates in June. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, in your January report, you don't say allegedly. Can you tell the court why you changed it to say that he allegedly killed 4
Because he was on the team now.
I don't know why that was changed, sir.
No one has ever told you that this defendant did not kill those 4 students, correct?
That is correct.
You know that he did it, but for some reason you made a change to say that he allegedly did it, but you don't know why.
That is correct, sir.
All right, doctor, I'm looking, now we're gonna go back to the January report. I wanna look at page 3 of the January report, and I wanna look at the items you considered. Your sources of available information. So in the January report, I'm looking at the last bullet point. Judge, I'm sorry, I don't know if I gave you a copy of People's Proposed Exhibit 63. May I do that?
Yes, are you moving to admit it at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Use it. Any objection? Thank you. Plaintiff 63 is admitted. You may approach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so doctor, we're looking at the last bullet point on Exhibit 63, the January report, and the last bullet point. Can you read that to us?
On the January 27th, well, that is dated January 27th. The last bullet point says Oakland County's Prosecutor's Office video footage.
Correct. And you list 3 videos, correct?
I do.
And what are those?
It's the Oxford High School video of 11/30/2021 shooting. Third video recorded by Ethan. And then I have manifesto recorded by Ethan.
All right, doctor, now I'd like you to turn to page 3 of your June report.
I'm looking at the June report.
Okay, and the last bullet point, what does the last bullet point in the June report say?
It says Oakland County deputies body camera footage.
And in that regard, you're talking about the body camera footage from the jail that we saw on the screen, correct?
Okay, I think so.
Okay, he's wearing the spit hood over his head and they got him in a chair. He's upset.
That is correct.
All right. So, doctor, you did in fact view the Oxford High School video of the November 30th, 2021 shooting, the Bird video recorded by Ethan, and the manifesto video recorded by Ethan, right? You had access to those and you reviewed those, correct? Correct.
That is correct.
And then you just took them out of your June report.
I don't know that I took them out.
I don't know
Doctor,
when he
you're welcome
pled.
to as much.
I would have to get the date of when Ethan pled. And maybe this report was generated before that, because then it's still alleged.
Time as you want, but
No,
if you look at that
he
list,
did a
on page 3,
report
those videos
and-
are not referenced.
In January, and in June, he changed it to allegedly. The first report didn't have allegedly in it.
Oh, so he went the other way.
Yeah, so
That's
that's why
weird.
they're asking, why did you put that in? And he can't remember.
It's not
And
even formed
the-
of.
it's
not
just
even
when the
informed of
paycheck clears, I write whatever you want, allegedly.
But why would they want him to write allegedly?
Probably because
I think he
wa-
just grabbed like a standard form that he's like, oh, this is my template that I fill out.
this is for
they're not-
young people. This is for murderers. This is for
Good morning.
Listed here.
Okay, so you took them out, and my question to you is why?
Stay awake. Excited. Stay awake.
it's getting really
My
good.
question,
Shooting.
doctor, is why aren't they listed? Why did you take them out between your 2 reports?
I'm not sure why.
But you agree with me, you watched those before your January report.
Can you repeat the question, please?
You watched those videos before you submitted your January report. So when you listed them in your sources, in your January report, you had in fact reviewed them.
That is correct.
Could be.
Doctor, on page 49 of your June report,
But he needs to answer that question, right? He needs to say that. He's not saying anything of credible, no credible statements as to indicate why he put allegedly. I don't know. I don't know. It's not
so
an
page
answer.
49 of your June report under events leading up to the shooting. Do you see that?
It's almost like he didn't write it.
Yes, sir.
Well, he might not have.
And you referenced the journal.
He
that the
can't
defendant kept. Do
say
you see
when
that?
he changed the stuff
In page 49.
and why.
Yes.
Just that he watched some videos,
So
Which
first
he
one,
hasn't
the first line
really-
under events leading up to the shooting.
written where
Yes,
and when he saw
When did you
those.
review the journal?
Like what date?
Yes.
I don't have the date in front of me, sir.
Well, when did you receive it from counsel?
I don't have that exact date in front of me, sir. I do not know the date.
I want to jump ahead to page 68 of your January report. I want to look at.
I have no
conclusion
idea.
events.
Just we want you to stay with
I'm on
us,
page
excited.
68. You see that?
One moment, sir.
Maybe some smexy text like yesterday. You never know.
You never know. That was a great stream. By the way, you guys
Doctor,
got to go
the
back and
last
watch my
sentence-
morning
I'm
stream from
sorry.
yesterday.
The second to last sentence under conclusion events says,
You weren't ready
surveillance
for
video shows the defendant sitting on the
all
ground
the
crying,
smexiness.
fully well knowing that he
It's
is on
so
the path of
bad.
no return. You see that?
I just got
Yes.
to engraved. Oh,
That's not
here's
in
a
your
new
June report.
vibrator. Okay.
We're talking about this case out of Texas, and Baker has been covering it all last week during Show Business. But there was a whole series of sexy texting and messaging and emails. It was cringeworthy. I did a stream on just those yesterday. You guys should check it out, and then also check out. It was a crazy ass trial.
And we might have to preference saying it was two 50-year-old people who
Page
hadn't
68 of your June report. It's at the top.
been keeping away from the snack bar for those 50 years.
It was the
Talking about
grossest.
how she was abused by her husband, and in the next text she's talking about, well, I really like choke play. Could we do that? So
yeah, you guys got to check it out, definitely.
It's conclusion events, and that sentence is taken out, isn't it?
On the June report,
Correct.
it says surveillance video shows Ethan sitting on the ground crying, fully well knowing that he's on a path of no return.
That's in your January report, correct?
That is correct.
But not in your June report, correct?
I actually just read that from my June report.
And Doctor, you and I have two different reports. Can I see what you're looking at?
Oh my God, two different reports.
Paper, please.
Thank you.
this turned
well-
into a fire in a dumpster real fast.
This just went downhill really quickly.
He has a demonstrative brain.
Your Honor, may I approach and provide my client with a copy of the report that is contained in my exhibit? I don't know if the report that he's referencing.
He's
is
got the wrong
another
report in
edit
his
that was
binder he's
done,
been
but I
testifying
have the
to this whole
copy that
time.
was submitted to the people and that was
Strike his
submitted to the
earlier
court.
testimony.
He was not provided that copy today, so I don't know if he's looking at.
What's
another
with
version.
those small water
And
bottles?
I'll just indicate for the record,
Stupid.
Your Honor, he showed me a report that's dated June 16th, but the language is not the same.
I had
Are there multiple copies of the June report?
Your Honor, this was a working
I
document.
watched
I
the
know
video
Dr.
of
King can
Brian
explain
Shaw
that.
getting one of
Obviously,
those.
since
He's
the
just
first
looking at
report,
it.
which was turned over to the
Thank you,
people in April,
because
a number of
they
things
give
have
them to you
transpired,
in
and he has
in
continued to
a
work and
sauce or
continues to edit
something.
his report, so that the report that the court has today is the most accurate report. So if I could approach with the exhibit that was turned over to The people,
I don't
as
know.
well
I
as
saw
the
that
court, to
earlier.
make sure that we are all looking at the exact
I saw the brain prop next to him, and he never testified to it. So I don't know.
same version of this report that is
Or not
ever
yesterday,
changing.
earlier
You
today.
should only have the report before him.
He's gonna
admitted
put
into
jello
evidence.
around it
Never
and
been
throw it
admitted
on the
into
floor.
evidence. Doctor, that's the only report that you are to be testifying to. Please don't testify to reports that have not been admitted into evidence because it causes confusion. You may approach the witness and give him the exhibit that has been admitted into evidence.
Thank you.
And what's the date of this
It is
exhibit?
the June 16th report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach? I'd like to see what he brought to try and understand why there are two reports with the same date and just have data map approach.
You may.
May I also approach?
Yes, absolutely.
I agree. Never drink water from Michigan, mainly because we don't want the bottled water being pumped out of the ground. So don't drink and then go out of business.
We'll take a moment to compare.
Yeah, I gotta find my Jody Arias stream. In about 30 minutes, we're gonna jump over to Jody Arias, and then we're gonna come back to this. You guys will all be redirected, so you can hang out with me all day.
Yay!
Yeah,
And I'll be going to a barbecue.
Do your
Yay!
barbecue. I expect you in chat though.
Well, I can't be because we'll be 20 people, and I'm raised properly, so I'm not on my phone when I'm at a party.
Sure.
Like you young peoples with your talks of the ticks and tubes of the U.
All right. So first, Dr. I want to make sure we clear this up. So you came to court today and brought a third version of your report that is in fact dated June 16th, but is not the final version. Is that correct?
So as attorney explained, this has been a work in progress that I emailed and sent over and updated. So there seems to be some confusion as to which one is current. I've been handed the copy of what I think has been admitted into evidence. And that's what I'm referencing.
All right. And now, Doctor, I'm going
Oh,
to back to you
there we
one
go.
you brought with you to court today. And what I'd like you to do is now turn to the report that's been admitted as an exhibit, the June 16th report that's in evidence.
Yeah, all of a sudden this really
If you
slowed
flip to
down.
page 68. Okay. And if you look at conclusion events, you see that the sentence I referenced in your January 27th, 2023 report, and that's still in the report you brought with you, is in fact not in the report that was provided to me, and that's in evidence today. You see that?
That's correct.
Okay. Doctor, where did that come from? The statement that surveillance video shows the defendant sitting on the ground crying, fully well knowing that he's on path of no return. Where did you get that?
I had an opportunity to view the video of him sitting in the lunchroom, the cafeteria.
But how can you tell that he's crying because he knows he's on a point of no return?
So, Doctor,
'Cause he's
that's
an
your
expert, Baker,
interpretation of
because
a
he's
video
an
of the defendant.
expert.
You say he's crying.
Okay.
There's no
He's a
audio.
body language
There's no
expert.
Did you ask the defendant
And
about
mind
that?
He's just an expert. Doesn't matter what kind. He's an expert.
And he can do star signs too.
All right. So, Doctor, between the first report and the second report, we're going to say you got about 2 months more time to work on it, correct?
That is correct.
And based on everything you reviewed and your discussions with the defendant and with his defense team, you identified all of the mitigating information you could find, correct?
That is correct.
And you included the mitigating information you found in your report, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, that was the whole point. That's why you're retained, is to find as much mitigation as you could and then present that to the court in a report and then come testify about it, right?
That's correct.
And Doctor, you were given sufficient time to meet with the defendant and consult with defense counsel, right?
That's correct.
And you weren't rushed in doing your report.
I don't think I was.
Okay. And if you felt there was some more mitigating
I kind of
information
want to
out
ask him
there
that.
in the world, like you talked to the neighbor, if you thought there was something else, you would have looked into that, correct?
That's correct.
Was there anything, Doctor, that you saw referenced in anything that was provided to you or that you learned from the defendant and you said, you know what, I haven't seen that. I would like to see that. Anything that you wanted to see that was not provided to you?
Yeah, right. The expert's supposed to be there to clarify.
I'm asking you, was there anything in addition to what you have that you said, I would like to see something else that was not provided to you? Were you given everything you asked for?
As far as I'm aware of.
All All right, Doctor, we're going to spend some time on your June 16th report. But before we review that, Doctor, did you listen to the testimony presented by the prosecution last Thursday and Friday?
I did.
Okay. And you've never spoken to any of the investigators in this case before, correct?
I have not.
Okay. And you've not spoken to Keegan or Heidi or Ms. Gibson Marshall or Ms. Darnell, the witnesses who testified who were in the school, right? You've never spoken with them.
I have not.
Okay. So when you heard their testimony, Doctor, did that have any impact whatsoever on your opinion?
It hasn't changed my opinion.
All right, Doctor. So now I'm going to focus on your June report, and I want to turn to page 4. And in the section under Ethan, Family Tree, and Early Influence, you represent ACEs, right? We're on page 4 of the June report.
That is correct.
All right. And Doctor, you don't reference the study that you're talking about there. You provide a footnote at the bottom, but it doesn't give me a journal or a place to find that specific report. Do you have a site for that with you?
You know, I don't remember. I didn't write it down.
Dr. King.
We're gonna have to go back and look. I don't remember.
It's Dr. King.
I'm not sure what
Is
you're
it Dr.
asking.
King?
All right.
I'm
if you
pretty
look
sure
at
it's
your
Dr.
footnotes-
King.
Okay. I do know he apparently is on faculty at my alma mater, which is Eastern Michigan University.
On page 4. You talk
At least
about the
that's what he
adverse
said.
childhood experiences study, child abuse and public health, but there's no citation. You list some authors, but I wasn't able to find that specific report. Do you have a citation? Some way to find that specific report?
So, just for clarification, in my testing, the ACEs consist of 10 questions. And the more ACEs that are present, the more the probability exists that this person is going to have issues. In my more than 16 hours of interviewing Ethan, I obtained the ACEs information from him. So if you're asking me, did I administer the ACEs? There was no need.
Okay,
But
but
the question is, for this footnote, do you have a specific citation for this footnote that would help aid in trying to find this article?
It's when the judge has to fill in and inform the expert on how to testify.
The citation is listed. in
This
the
is his 25th or something like that.
study. And the author, Dr. Robert Anda, from the Center for Disease Control.
and what I'm telling you, Doctor, is I Googled that. I tried to look it up, but without a citation, I was not able to find that specific report. And I'm asking you if you have a citation so I could reference the exact report you're referring to.
This is what I looked at, sir, in terms of the ACEs coming out of the CDC.
Do you have a copy of that, Doctor?
Where's the
you're referencing
report, sir?
footnote 2.
I don't have a copy with me. I looked at a study coming out of the CDC and Kaiser pertaining to the ACEs.
So, Doctor, I think this was in your slide, but that study looked at the adverse health effect on the child, right? In this case, the defendant. Not
This is going to
on-
force the
so
state
the
to call a
things they would
rebuttal.
experience later in life because of the ACEs, right?
That is correct.
Health effects and
It's
heart
not gonna be
problems
done
and stress
today.
and all these things, right?
That is correct.
The reason I'm asking you for the study is because in your
Yeah,
It's
right?
really good to
description
show
on
that
paragraph 4,
you can pay whatever you can pay for whatever testimony you want.
Yeah, I mean, but I think, you know, I don't know if he made it up. He probably grabbed like some sort of anecdote out of like the DSM-5 or something and just plugged it in and said he saw a report or something. But yeah, I'm not going to use this guy. I have a really good guy that I use all the time, and he's in Oakland and he's in Wayne, and I'm surprised. Well, not surprised. Maybe he didn't want to do this, but he's like one of the go-to guys.
you say that ACEs culminate in numerous antisocial activities such as aggressive acts, unwarranted violence, and heinous crimes. And I couldn't find that anywhere in relation to ACEs. And I'm asking you, where do you get that from?
Sure. Sir, if you were to research and look at the information surrounding the ACEs study, I think it was conducted in 95 and 97. My dates could be off of 17,000 subjects. There is
Yeah, he's been
a
qualified
litany of information
several
in terms
times
of
before.
what happens to someone who possesses these X amount of ACEs.
And so the problem is, Doctor, you can't give me that report. You can't cite that to me, so I can question you about that.
Okay.
Okay. All right then.
So, Doctor, you talked about a 10 question survey, and in fact, you just said you didn't need to score him. You didn't attempt to score him, did you?
I did not administer the ACEs because I administered 15 psychological tests that provided me the information I needed to reference the ACEs.
All right, Doctor. So you say there's studies out there that can trace an ACEs score to other effects, but you didn't need to give it to trace it to other effects. You had other testing. You don't need ACEs. That's your testimony.
I got that information from testing even over 15 different test and screening measures.
All right. And so how hard is it to give someone an ACEs score? Ask the 10 questions.
Actually, it's not difficult at all.
Okay, but you didn't do it.
There was no need to.
All right. And you agree with me that, in fact, you need a score of 6 or more to be predicted. That was your testimony on direct, correct?
So what I said was 6 or more can predict. It's a predictor. It's not a precise screening measure that this person will have these type of problems.
Doctor, you relied largely on the defendant's self-reporting for a lot of your analysis, correct?
No, that is not correct.
Okay. Let me ask you this. You're aware that he has said that he was not bullied, right? You're aware that he said that?
That is correct.
And that he thinks that he had an okay home life, right? That's his opinion.
That's his opinion.
Right? You know that he didn't suffer any sexual abuse, right?
I'm not aware of that, sir.
Brian, are you asking me this question, or are you saying that they should be asking the doctor this question? Because I feel like that's a good question for the doctor.
Physical abuse?
And if you're asking me,
That is debatable.
this guy
So,
seems
doctor,
like an act
Can
because
you,
he
as you
can't
sit here
cite
today,
the
can you tell the
sources.
court that, in fact, this defendant
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like, if you're an expert and you're going to have some sort of qualified basis for your answers, you should be able to cite the sources. Could the defense just ask to strike this witness? It would be pretty bad because it's a defense witness. So you just try to mitigate your damages and move forward. Judge, just remember the egg drop. Remember the egg drop. Forget about everything he said. Just remember he dropped the egg.
Yeah, and again, we have seen a lot of mental health witnesses in other cases, and some of them are really good and some of them are really bad. Just again, as a case we all have seen, the AH and JD case.
Yeah,
Dr. Muffin versus Dr. Smeagol. One of them was really professional, could cite everything, had everything ready in her brain, and the other one, I watched some movies.
Let's see. It sounds like unaliving is taking place. Yeah, pretty much. This expert is going down. Retired mental health provider. For some reason, your response to mental health sounds as if you feel this is an act. Is that accurate? Oh, you are a retired mental health provider. For some reason, your responses to mental health sound as if you feel this is an act. I feel like this is an unjustified conclusion made by this expert. Oh, Vice's, welcome Vice's crew. Real quick. So we are still on Ethan Crumley Miller hearing. This is day 3. This is the defense's case in chief, and this is the third expert witness proffered by the defense. Ethan Crumley is the 15-year-old that shot up Oxford High School in November of 2021. He has pled guilty to 4 counts of murder and 7 counts of attempted murder. He's being sentenced as an adult. The question for this hearing is, will he get life without the possibility of parole? The U.S. Supreme Court and the Michigan Supreme Court, as well as some statutes, say that it is cruel and unusual to sentence a juvenile to life without the possibility of parole. However, it leaves the possibility for the state to argue by clear and convincing evidence that there's no redeemable quality in this child and that he should not get the opportunity for parole. And that is what this hearing is about. And so this is a defense expert, really intelligent guy, that can't establish any of the basis for his conclusions, can't point to any direct research for his that support his conclusions, but he dropped an egg. He dropped an egg in a bowl, which shows the damage that could be caused to a brain if someone was to take a fall, and apparently looked at a video of the defendant falling over at a restaurant one time and has concluded that he is suffering from some sort of brain injury, I think.
Yeah.
But we're not really sure of the basis for this. So he's being crossed right now. Very good cross, very bad for the witness on his credibility here. So that's where we are.
He can also read minds. He knows when he watches a video of a person, he knows what the person is thinking.
Yes. He watched a video of the defendant and concluded that he was crying, and he was facing the facts that he had done something on which he cannot recover or whatever. I don't know.
He was on a path of no return.
Path of no return. That's what it was. And so the prosecutor asks him, well, how did you determine that? Well, I watched the video, of course. So that's the kind of expert we're dealing with right now. But welcome all. MG Law, welcome. And everyone else, Corn Pope, and everyone I see jumping in.
That has
We will continue.
the score of 6 or higher on aces.
Absolutely.
All right. So you can score him on aces right now.
100%.
Okay, let's do that. Take
Absolutely.
me through the testing, take me through the 10 questions, and let's talk about his score.
So I don't have the question in front of me, but I can ask some of the questions to get the information to that question. I'll be happy to walk you through.
Okay, please.
Okay. You want to ask about
Dr. Silverclear, I don't care what you want to ask about. I want you to tell me the defendant's aces score. That's what I want to know. You said you didn't do it, you didn't need to, but now I want to know what his score is.
So I was very clear with you that I administered 15 tests, and I said I did not administer the ACEs.
Welcome, Jeff. Thank you
Very
for the
clear
raid.
with that.
You did, and then you just told me you could do it right now.
I said I can give him an ACEs score based on the 15 tests that I administered.
All right, doctor. So why don't you give me his aces score based on the 15 tests that you administered?
So his score will probably range somewhere between 6 to about 8.
And
He's
that's based
currently-
on the other test that you gave him.
Yes, sir.
And that's not anywhere in your report. You agree?
I did not administer the ACEs.
He's currently 17.
Doctor, on
I
page
believe.
6 of your report,
Before we get too far from this issue, there was something I'd love to clear up. When the prosecutor asked you about physical abuse, your answer was debatable. What did you mean by that?
Sir, if a child is injured and the parent does not take action, that is considered physical abuse. When Ethan fell in the diner,
Or is it considered
and
neglect,
did
sir?
that, and the owner said, I need to call 911, and didn't, I consider that physical abuse.
And just for everybody joining me, I have been covering, the whole reason I'm on YouTube is I've been covering James and Jennifer Crumley, who are the parents of this defendant, who have been charged, even though they didn't pull the trigger, with involuntary manslaughter. And this is the county in which I reside. And this is my first live stream, was their preliminary examination. I haven't really been following Ethan's case. He's the actual shooter, because it's kind of cut and dry. He did it. He admitted to doing it. But this is a preview, in my opinion, of what the case is that's going to bring against the parents. And you can see right now they're trying to put the emphasis, the defense is, in this case, trying to point the finger at the parents and say that the parents were negligent, the parents. And it's going to be interesting, because I'm capturing all of this. When you see the police officer put the emphasis on the parents, when you see this expert put the emphasis on the parents, and the prosecution puts the emphasis on the child, in 3 months' time, when it comes time to the parent for the parents' trial, the same prosecutor and the same team are going to be saying it's the parents. And so there's going to be a flip, an absolute flip of the dynamics and the witnesses' emphasis on things, and it's going to be very interesting.
so
Before you move on, is that the only
I have
thing
to
that you
go
consider
to
as
my
physical
barbecue.
abuse that was directed to this defendant?
Okay.
Additionally, when
Take care, Baker. Thanks for joining me. Have a good one, and enjoy your barbecue, man.
Yeah, I'll have to rewatch Jody later. But everyone, have fun, and remember all the new people who just jumped in on the Vices Raid. Please like and subscribe on Dave's channel. He's a nice guy. He
am.
deserves a little thumbs up. And see you all down the road.
All right. Take care, Baker.
That's a good one to go out on. Bye.
Bye.
was with his parents and fell again and reported a loss of consciousness and was not taken to seek medical attention, I also consider that to be physical abuse.
If you may continue.
thank you, Your Honor. On page 6, Doctor, in the last sentence of exposure to violent scenes, you make the statement, quote, this mentality is typical of persons who spend an inordinate amount of time ingesting violent content. Do you see that?
Page 6, what paragraph?
It's the last sentence under exposure to violent scenes.
Yes, sir.
Doc, you don't cite anything for that, do you?
There is no citation here.
Okay. What do you base that on?
I base it on my clinical experience, sir.
Doctor, I mean, that's been studied, hasn't it?
It has.
It's been largely debunked. Isn't that true?
That is not true.
Okay. Can you cite me anything?
So-
Any literature that substantiates
Sure, I'm happy to respond. So it's hotly debated as to whether if one is exposed to frequent scenes of violence and carnage, if that exposure has an adverse effect on that child. Some experts
The video games made him do it. That's this guy's testimony. He testified earlier that the video games made him do that. Call of Duty made him do this.
say no, and some experts say yes. I can cite you Eric Erickson, developmental psychologist, who chronicles that between the ages of 0 to 5, a child learns most of his core values. In fact, children absorb what they observe.
So, doctor, thank you for that answer. But the defendant's playing of video games actually post-dates this thinking, right? He reports having violent thoughts long before he played any of those video games. Isn't that true?
That is true.
Okay. So you can't have cause and effect where the violent thoughts are caused by the video games he played later. Would you agree with me?
Can you rephrase that question, please?
He's having violent thoughts at age 5 or 6, and he plays video games at age 13. You would agree with me, the video games didn't cause the thoughts.
Sure didn't make them better.
Okay. So you're saying a person who already had violent thoughts was urged on by the video games he was watching.
What I am saying is that at age 6, if you're having aberrant thoughts and you engage yourself in frequent exposure to video games, it's not going to make you a better person.
We can agree on that, doctor.
Thank you.
All right, doctor, on page 7, you talk about mental illness, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you cite the statutory definition of mental illness, and you also reference something you refer to as, quote, the Miller factor. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Doctor, which Miller factor are you referring to?
The Miller factor of 2012, or the Miller hearing of 2012.
So, doctor, we walked through at the start of your testimony what the 5 Miller factors are from the
It's not a
United States
factor.
Supreme Court. There are 5 of them. And what I'm asking you is, when you say in the last line of the first paragraph under evidence of mental illness, you say taking into consideration certain factors known as, quote, the Miller factor. And what I'm saying is, when you're talking about mental illness, which Miller factor
He
are you
doesn't
talking
know.
The inability to extricate oneself from a dysfunctional family.
All right. So you're saying the second, his family and home life, is where you would put mental illness.
It's family and home life. Yes, sir.
Doctor, you say that the defendant, and this is in the last full paragraph on page 7, that the defendant is without question someone who is mentally ill. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And you base that on the text messages that you cite in the pages following and some testing you did, correct?
I base that on my clinical interviews. I base that on my testing using objective testing methods.
So I just want you to look at the sentence that follows that. It says, a review of his verbalization through text messages and psychological testing substantiate this assertion, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you reference a group of roughly 200 text messages, correct?
Yes, sir.
I always have a question of correlation versus causation. I feel like if somebody is predisposed to violent acts, they might also play violent video games, right? But just because you play violent video games doesn't mean that you're going to go commit violent acts. So I think there's a correlation, which most experts talk about now. This expert came out the gate talking about the causation.
Doctor, the statutory definition of mental illness in criminal law relates to the question of criminal responsibility. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Have you testified previously about criminal responsibility?
Exactly, rush to judgment.
And that has to do with whether the defendant has a viable insanity defense, true?
That is correct.
Doctor, you reviewed Dr. Anaker's report, correct?
I did.
And would you agree with me that it's a very thorough report?
I do not.
Okay, what's missing?
I looked at Dr. Anaker's report, and in all of my years of testing, and this is, of course, no disrespect meant, sir. I'm just giving a factual response to your question. Not one testing was done in Dr. Anaker's report. In Dr. Anaker's report, Ethan expressed hearing voices and seeing things. In Dr. Anaker's report, Ethan said that at age 6, he went up to the preschool person, and this is what he said: "Wouldn't it be cool if cars can just crash into this school and kill a lot of people?" And the person said, "And why would you say that?" That is referenced in Dr. Anaker's report, sir.
Right, it is, exactly. But why is that a problem or something missing in her report?
So to conclude that such a person does not have mental illness is striking.
All right, so doctor, other than the absence of testing, anything else that you, where you disagree with it's a thorough report?
It is not, sir.
Okay, outside of the testing, what else do you think is missing?
So to diagnose someone with mental illness, there's 3 ways to do that. You look at the brain.
Which you did not do, correct?
I did not do.
Correct.
You test the brain.
Correct.
Which I did, times 15.
Okay.
Then you use cluster of symptoms using the DSM. That is the Bible or the Quran for psychologists. There is no evidence that that was done. And then the fourth way, which most people do, is to guess. I did not see 1, 2, 3.
Okay, doctor, you both didn't test the brain, right?
I'm sorry?
Neither of you tested the brain. You've agreed with that. You didn't give him an MRI. Neither of you did. Neither you nor Dr. Anaker tested the brain.
No, that is not true.
I'm sorry, imaged the brain.
Thank you. I
Okay,
did not.
so number one, neither of you did number one.
That is
And,
correct.
and your testimony is you did number two. You gave him 15 tests, right? And you're saying Dr. Anaker did not.
It was
right.
not evident in her report.
Okay. And you're testifying that the third method is to look at the reported symptoms, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, that's exactly what Dr. Anaker did. She included that. She just disagreed with your conclusion, right? She didn't deny you had symptoms.
I don't think that's true, sir.
You just referenced her talking about this report to the person on the playground at the school, right? She included that, right?
Her conclusion was that he's not mentally ill.
That's right, doctor. In fact, she cites all the text message and many more than you do that when he talks about, I have hallucinations, right? She includes that in her report. Would you agree with me?
She did.
Okay. So what I'm trying to get at, doctor, is I asked you if it's a very thorough report. You said no. You said she didn't do testing. And I'm asking you, what else do you think was not in her report that makes it not complete or thorough?
Looking at cluster of symptoms, looking at the DSM, and based on the guidelines of the DSM, which is a diagnostic and statistical manual, if someone tells you as a psychologist, I am hearing voices. If someone tells you as a psychologist, I am seeing things. And if you look at your text messages,
Did you
and in
test
your
him for
text messages,
malingering?
it's replete with, I am seeing things. There's a demon in my house. Let me take a video. That is evidence of mental illness, sir. Mental illness is real.
So, doctor, you have not answered my question. I'm not asking you if you disagree with Dr. Anaker because I know you do. What I'm asking you is she references all of that in her report and she disagrees with your conclusion. And I'm saying what else is missing from her report? Could you just answer just that question, please?
I don't know what else is missing from her report,
Okay,
sir.
so just the testing.
I don't know what else is missing from her report, sir.
All right. And in fact, her report cites extensively from the record. Would you agree? She cites a lot of text messages. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
And extensively from the journal. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
She talks about his internet searches. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
The bird video,
Yes, sir.
the video of the school shooting,
Yes, sir.
her own questions of the defendant and his responses regarding those things, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Other than your disagreement on the diagnosis, is there anything in Dr. Anaker's report that you believe is factually incorrect?
So, sir, just to clarify,
Charlie, I see your
my
super chat. I'll get to it in a
response
minute.
is not my disagreement with Dr. Haneker's report. I've never met Dr. Haneker. What I am saying is that I don't know what her conclusions are based on. I don't know. It's not on the DSM. It's not based on testing. I don't know what the conclusions are based on.
Doctor, I've asked you a straightforward question is, are anything in her report factually incorrect? It's a yes or no question, whether you believe she has something that's factually incorrect.
It's difficult for me to answer that question, sir.
Well, you didn't highlight or note that she got something wrong, did you, in terms of the facts?
And the reason why it's difficult for me to answer that question.
Doctor, you can address that and redirect item. I'm not concerned with why it's difficult.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Just one moment.
Yes.
Charlie, Houston, thank you very much for the $10 super chat. How much of what happens in this trial would be admissible in the parents' trial? Will the defense be able to portray the prosecution as disingenuous, conflicting,
Doctor, I'd like to show you
for trying both cases?
Dr. Anaker.
So they won't be able to attack the prosecution. You can't, because the prosecutor is not a witness. But the witness's statements, like when the police officer was on the stand and intentionally playing down the parents' involvement in this case, that testimony can be impeached if the same officer takes the stand, whether the defense calls the same officer or the state calls the same officer in the parents' trial. So that can be, or any other witnesses that were called to the stand. The state presented witnesses to intentionally put the blame on the child and downplay the involvement of the parents. And any of their testimony can and will be, it should be anyways, used to impeach those witnesses if they're called for the parents' case. So that's kind of the problem here. But you can't really say the state, in theory, can argue both cases, right? argue alternative viewpoints, and so you can't really attack that, but you can use the witnesses' statements.
Report you indicated you did review it, correct?
I did, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, and could you just reference which exhibit that would be in your body?
Yeah,
Your Honor,
all
this is
ghost
not
hunters
exhibit
are
plan.
mentally ill, right?
Doctor, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 64.
Yeah, and you guys missed it. This guy literally dropped an egg in court into a bowl. The judge was like freaked out. You're not going to drop that in my courtroom. He's like, oh, I have a bowl. He dropped an egg in court to signify something about how the brain gets injured when you hit your head. So that was entertaining. We're going to do a slow-mo clip of that.
Do you recognize that?
I do, sir.
Is that the report you reviewed?
Yes, sir.
What doctor
Your Honor, this time I
speaking
move to
blackface?
admit People's proposed 64.
Any objection?
No objection.
Thank you. Please, excuse me, people, who has admitted?
Your Honor, may I provide the corporate copy?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Also, in a few minutes, we are going to pause this. And for those of you who don't know, on Tuesdays and Saturdays at noon Eastern time, myself and Nicholas Staroff cover Jodi Arias. We're rewatching the trial. So you guys will automatically be redirected over there. And then after that, be about an hour. And then we come back to this again and we'll pick up where we left off and we'll get caught up because the court's going to take a lunch break anyway. So you won't be missing anything if you just bounce back and forth with us. So hopefully you enjoy the bouncing back and forth. We'll do a little Jodi interlude in amongst this case. Yeah, he literally dropped an egg. It was ridiculous.
All right, Doctor, I want to look at page
It's
61
like the Ally
of
commercial with the pony.
Dr. Anaker's report. And I want to read you some statements from Dr. Anaker's report and ask you if you agree with them. Pretty close to the end, Doctor. It's 67 pages, I think, and it's page 61.
Thank you. I'm there now.
All right. So I'm looking at the first full paragraph on the page, and I'm going to go through a few of the statements there. If you look at the first sentence, Dr. Anaker indicates, when considering the question whether the defendant was experiencing a substantial disorder of thought at the legally relevant time, there is no indication from objective sources that the defendant engaged in unusual behavior that would be typical of psychosis in and around the time of the alleged offenses. Do you see that?
I see that, sir.
Do you agree with that?
I don't know what those objective sources are that she's referencing, sir.
It was
That's
it was
what
chicken.
my question to you, Doctor. She says there aren't any.
Chicken egg.
And what I want to know is, do you have any objective sources that the defendant was experiencing or was showing unusual behavior that would be typical of psychosis in and around the time of the alleged offenses? Do you have any objective sources you would point to?
I do.
Please tell us, Doctor.
We all saw the video, sir.
The video of the shooting.
We saw the video of the shooting.
All right. And you're saying he's exhibiting signs of psychosis during the video of the shooting.
We saw the video that he made the night before. We listened to him saying, I am a demon.
I'm glad you brought that up, Doctor. Do you know what that's in reference to?
I don't know.
Do you know who the defendant's idol is?
I don't know.
You didn't ask him that?
No, I don't know.
He references it in the journal. Did you not read the journal?
I read his journal.
Okay. And you know he idolizes another school shooter. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that.
Okay. And do you know that the reference to a demon is a direct reference to that other school shooter?
So for someone to verbalize that tells me that person has a serious thought disorder.
So if I say to you, Doctor, you know, that other school shooter referenced demons and I really think he's great, you're going to say I have some evidence of psychosis because I referenced that and I admire that person.
I would say you have some serious issues.
Okay. Any other objective evidence?
I'm sorry, sir.
Any other objective sources that you would rely on other than the two videos you just referenced?
Objective evidence will be testing, which wasn't done.
No, Doctor, objective sources means independent, not self-reporting. A lot of your testing is self-reporting. I'm talking about objective sources. Let's help with this, Doctor. Can you explain to the court the difference between objective sources and...
Of course, I was muted. This is Ethan Crumbly, the school shooter case. He pled guilty. He didn't plead insanity or anything. So this has nothing to do with his sanity. What this is we have a presumption that it is cruel and unusual to incarcerate a juvenile for life without the possibility of parole. The state is trying to overcome that presumption by presenting evidence that this child is irredeemable and that he should never be let out. And so we had the state's expert or the state's witnesses now, and already called the first day or day and a half. And now we are on the defense's case in chief. This is their third expert. And he's trying to convince the court that this child is somewhat redeemable. That's the goal. And so that he should have the opportunity for parole in like 25, 30 years, and not just be incarcerated for the rest of his life. That is the purpose of this. So it has nothing to do with mental health. It's all about redeemability. So that's the nature of this. This is the Miller case, or the Miller hearing rather. But I am going to actually stop the stream right now. We're going to take a momentary pause. I'm going to redirect you guys all over to my Jody Arias stream, because we do Jody Arias at noon on Tuesdays. We have about an hour's worth of testimony, and then we'll come back to this as well, straight back to this. We will pick up where we left off. The court is going to take a lunch break, so we'll get caught up by the time we come back for the part 2 of day 3 for the Ethan Crumley case, and we'll go from there. So I am going to just jump out. You guys should, if you have automatic redirect already set up on your system, you should be good to go. If not, what I'm actually going to do before I go, I'm going to pop a link to the Jody Arias the Jody Arias stream in the chat. So you guys can join us over there if you want, and then come back here for the remainder of this in about an hour or so. Yes, it's Jody Day. Jody. And by the way, for all those who don't know, these are Jody Arias's legs. This is her prison art that somebody sent me. So a link is in the chat. Otherwise, you will be automatically redirected, and I will see you guys over there momentarily.